Marrying multiple wives can get skill bonuses. After crossing over, the government gave Lu Chuan 2 wives. He discovered that he could receive rewards from his wives through their affection levels. Chapter 1. The heavy snow had been falling for over 2 days. The snow had already accumulated to half a meter deep. The entire world was covered in a blanket of white, with no end in sight. Lu Chuan exhaled a deep breath, quickly tucking his chin in. He put his hand inside his collar to warm himself for a moment before once again carefully twisting the hemp rope in his hand. He was making a bow for hunting. As a mercenary, Lu Chuan accidentally found himself in this world, inhabiting the body of a man who had just frozen to death. In this bitter cold, with a lack of food and clothes, freezing to death or starving to death were all too common. Outside the city of Binju, the bones of the dead were scattered, victims of the snow and fatigue. The current Great Xia dynasty. It was divided, in chaos due to constant warfare, plagued by internal strife from 8 competing kings, and external threats from the Turkic, Xiongnu, and Uyghur forces. The entire country, worn down by years of war, had left the common people struggling to survive. So, the first thing Lu Chuan thought of upon waking up was finding a way to survive. In his past life, he had navigated the jungles of Southeast Asia, always succeeding. But now, the wheat had just been planted, and his family had no reserves of food. The thought of borrowing food was laughable. Every household was struggling to get by. To survive, he had no choice but to live off the land. Fortunately, his mercenary skills hadn't been lost. If he could make a bow and hunt for food in the mountains, at least he wouldn't starve and could survive the winter. Moreover, the year-end food taxes were coming soon. But with no food reserves in his granary, he had to find a way to buy some. Since he had crossed over, he had to find a way to survive and thrive. While he was busy with his work, a loud and rough voice echoed from the foot of the mountain. "Is Lu Chuan home? The government has sent people to select wives at the threshing ground near the village entrance. Hurry up, if you're late, all the able-bodied ones will be chosen." The voice belonged to the village chief of Shui Sui village. Though he had no real power, he had some education, and his whole life had been spent as a scholar. After becoming village chief, he was responsible for relaying government orders. He was a simple, hard-working old man who meant no harm to anyone. As for the wife selection he mentioned, that's a long story. After years of war, the male population in the Great Xia dynasty had dwindled severely. Many of those remaining were maimed, missing limbs or otherwise unable to work. The tax revenues were down, and as the years passed, the population of Great Xia continued to decline, needing years of recovery. And this wasn't a good thing either. To put it simply, the officials wanted people for taxes, and they wanted population control. Their women from criminal families couldn't contribute much to taxes. They couldn't carry loads or do much farm work, and most didn't know how to farm. But if they got married, they could be taxed based on their household. This would allow the government to collect 2 forms of taxes. If they had 1 or 2 children, both people and money would be guaranteed. "I'm coming." Lu Chuan quickly finished twisting the hemp rope, dipped it in tung oil, and shouted toward the foot of the mountain, "I'll be right there." There was no escaping. The state government of Binju had already thoroughly investigated their situation, and escaping wasn't as easy as it seemed. No matter where you went, you needed a pass. Without one, you would lose your basic rights as a person. No one would care about you, and anyone could kill you without consequence. The commoners in a feudal dynasty were far less free than most imagined. Lu Chuan quickly changed into simpler clothes, descended the rugged mountain road, and arrived at the threshing ground at the village entrance. At the threshing ground, a row of orderly officials was escorting a group of women dressed in ragged clothes. Though the women were poorly dressed, their faces were still clean. It was evident that they had been washed before being brought here, but the rest of their appearance was less carefully attended to. The villagers nearby were watching with glee. Most of them had arrived early, and the strong and able-bodied ones, suitable for farming, had already been selected. All that remained were women who looked delicate and weak, mostly daughters of officials. They stood there dejectedly, knowing that if no one chose them, most of them would end up in the Imperial Courtesan Bureau, or worse, sold to the northern Xiongnu to become slaves. That would be even more unbearable. "Here? Go ahead and choose." The leader, holding a scabbard, smiled and nodded. He tapped the scabbard on Lu Chuan's back. Lu Chuan staggered and quickly took 2 steps forward to steady himself. Damn it. Good people are easily taken advantage of, just like how a good horse gets ridden. Lu Chuan turned around and looked. He saw a smirk tugging at the corner of the man's mouth. What's wrong? You don't seem happy. You dare to glare at me. If that's the case, then you'd better pick 2 women to take back today. Otherwise, don't blame me if my knife shows no mercy. With that, the surrounding soldiers burst into loud laughter, their expressions arrogant. Lu Chuan's mouth twitched. Damn, this was an outright provocation. He didn't know what he had done to offend this person. Could it be because he was too handsome and made him feel threatened? With no choice, he gritted his teeth and stepped forward. Lu Chuan lifted his head and looked at the first girl, slightly distracted. She was a slender girl, probably around 17 or 18 years old. Though she wasn't tall, her figure was quite appealing. With her shapely curves and long, delicate legs, just standing there, she gave off a soft and seductive vibe. It was obvious she was from an official family. Her eyes were filled with despair, and as she looked at Lu Chuan, tears welled up in her eyes. Please, take me. Her voice was filled with heartfelt pleading. If no one selected her, she would be sent to the Imperial Courtesan Bureau, and if that happened, she would rather die. Lu Chuan looked at her, coming back to his senses. With her appearance and beauty, if she were in his original world, she would at least be an online goddess. As he looked at her again, a panel of information appeared above her head. Name, Su Ruan. Age, 17. Appearance, 89. Affection, 10. Rescuing her will grant personal space, 3 cubic meters. Lu Chuan stared at the information in disbelief. Personal space. In that moment, excitement surged through him. Damn. He had originally thought that after crossing over, he would have to rely on his abilities to start from scratch and rise up. But now, it seemed like a system had come to him unexpectedly. System. Lu Chuan tried to calm his excitement and called out. Unfortunately, there was no response. It seemed like it wasn't a real system, but more like a task notification and reward. Moreover, while 3 cubic meters didn't sound very large, it could still hold a lot of things. For instance, a bow, arrows, and the game's prey could all be temporarily stored inside. Not having to carry extra weight meant that he could go farther. Thinking of this, Lu Chuan's heart burned with excitement. However, he still needed to verify more things, like what the affection value would be useful for. Also, was the reward fixed, or would it increase with some improvements? I'll take her. Lu Chuan pointed to Su Ruan and spoke loudly. The man who had struck Lu Chuan with the scabbard suddenly turned dark. On their way here, he had already set his eyes on Su Ruan and another girl from the group. He originally thought that these women wouldn't dare to choose such things, but now, there was one who was willing to risk it all. His face turned black in an instant. You're supposed to pick 2. Continue picking. MHM. Lu Chuan, in a good mood, ignored the man's attitude. He then turned his attention to the second girl. But there was no information displayed above her head. He continued to look at the third and fourth girls. Finally, above the sixth girl's head, a line of information appeared once again. Name, Baisu. Age, 16. Appearance, 91. Affection, 20. Rescuing her will grant beginner hunting skill, beginner beast taming skill. The beginner hunting skill wasn't very useful to him. Lu Chuan didn't think his hunting skills were lacking, since he had lived in the wilderness before and survival skills were second nature to him. However, the beginner beast taming skill was exactly what he needed. She's the one. Lu Chuan spoke up with determination. The man's expression darkened even more. Damn it, both women Lu Chuan picked were the ones he had set his sights on. A cold glint flashed in his eyes. Chapter 2. However, he didn't show it. Are you done picking? Take them back. The officer sneered and said, by the way, in 15 days, we'll be collecting the yearly food tax. We charge by the number of people. Don't forget to bring the grain here. If anyone tries to cheat and shortchange us, don't blame me if my knife shows no mercy. After saying that, the officer casually rested his scabbard on his shoulder and swaggered off. Lu Chuan shook his head slightly. He glanced at Su Ruan and Baisu. Let us go. What puzzled Lu Chuan was that, although taking in the 2 women was essentially successful, his reward had still not arrived. Once they returned home with the 2 women, Rescued Su Ruan, Su Ruan's affection 10, reward, personal space of 3 cubic meters. Rescued by Siu's affection 20, reward, beginner hunting skill, beginner beast taming skill. At the moment the voice echoed in Lu Chuan's mind, he felt a warm flow course through his body. Lu Chuan opened the courtyard door. Su Ruan and Bai Siu followed him inside. Upon seeing the shabby courtyard, both of them were shocked. At the same time, their impression of Lu Chuan dropped significantly. Such a poor and shabby courtyard, and yet he chose the 2 most beautiful women. It seemed he must be a desperate man. However, neither of them dared to show it now. There happened to be 2 rooms. From today on, you'll stay in the west room. Rest for a while. I'll go find some food. As he spoke, Lu Chuan walked to the side, pulled out a rope from the bucket, and tied it to the bow he had already prepared. A simple hunting bow was ready. Su Ruan looked at Lu Chuan with some curiosity. When she saw the bow in his hand, a flash of surprise crossed her eyes. Unaware of her gaze, Lu Chuan pulled out an arrow that had been drying nearby. He strung the bow, narked the arrow. In that moment, his mercenary instincts, enhanced by the beginner hunting skill, kicked in. Lu Chuan felt as if his vision had become more focused. The old persimmon tree, which had been blurry from a distance, now appeared crystal clear. It was as if his eyes could automatically adjust their focus. The feeling was exhilarating. The distance between him and the tree was at least 50 meters. With a twang, the bowstring snapped. Whoosh! A sound of air being pierced echoed through the air. In the next second, the last withered persimmon on the old tree was shot down by Lu Chuan. Not bad. Lu Chuan weighed the bow in his hand. While his aim wasn't perfect, it was the best he could do for now. Perhaps in the future, he could get himself a compound bow. With this thought, Lu Chuan nodded at Su Ruan and Bai Siu before turning and heading up the mountain along the small path. Bai Siu was fine with it, but Su Ruan stood frozen in place, as if unable to believe her eyes. What's wrong with you? Bai Siu looked at Su Ruan in surprise. Did you see that? He just shot the persimmon off the tree with 1 arrow. And all he used was a wooden bow. With that kind of accuracy, he'd at least be a centurion in a military camp. Su Ruan said seriously. She was from a family of archers, so while others couldn't tell, she could clearly recognize the skill. She never expected that such a village would have someone so skilled in archery. Bai Siu was also stunned by Su Ruan's words. She knew who Su Ruan was, and if she said that, Lu Chuan's archery skills must indeed be extraordinary. The further he went into the mountains, the colder it became. The mountain was covered in a blanket of white snow. The path wasn't too difficult to walk on, as the snow hadn't yet solidified. Lu Chuan trudged along, 1 step deep and 1 step shallow, as he ascended. There wasn't much food left at home. Aside from the yearly food tax, if he couldn't hunt anything soon, his family would probably run out of food in a couple of days. No matter what, today he had to bring something back. And not only that, he needed to catch more prey and figure out a way to exchange it for some grain. Otherwise, paying the food tax would become a huge problem. The heavy snow had sealed the mountain, making it hard to find anything to eat. After walking along the mountain path for over half an hour, Lu Chuan still hadn't spotted any game. Damn it! Could his first hunt end up empty-handed? He thought there would at least be a beginner-esque grace period. Just then, Lu Chuan looked into the distance and noticed a series of thin, elongated footprints in the snow. They led forward and eventually disappeared. Lu Chuan didn't take it lightly. He jumped down and carefully inspected the tracks. A glimmer of excitement appeared in his eyes. Looks like today won't be a wasted trip. The prints were narrow, with pointed ends. Experienced hunters could immediately tell it was the track of a young roe deer. However, roe deer prints were somewhat similar to wild boar tracks, so many people couldn't tell the difference and would retreat when they saw this type of print. The beginner hunting skill really works well. Lu Chuan thought to himself. Before, he wouldn't have known any of this. It was as though this knowledge had appeared out of nowhere in his mind. Following the footprints, Lu Chuan pursued them further. Finally, by the bank of a river that hadn't completely frozen over, he spotted a young roe deer drinking water. It was drinking while casually looking around. But it didn't seem alert, more like it was simply admiring the scenery. Lu Chuan didn't hesitate. He raised his bow, and in that moment, his vision seemed to focus, and everything became clearer. With a swish, the arrow flew out like a shooting star. The roe deer didn't react in time. The wooden arrow struck it directly in the head. The roe deer started to run, but after just a few steps, it collapsed, dead. Lu Chuan walked over and carefully examined it. Such a pity, the distance was too far, and my preparation wasn't quite enough. The wooden arrow was too light. I was aiming for its eyes, hoping to hit the roe deer's skull directly. But now that's not possible. The arrow had pierced through the roe deer's head. Although the skin could be fully removed, the head was ruined. Still, there was meat to eat, so it wasn't too bad. Lu Chuan didn't dwell on it. He quickly stored the roe deer in his personal space. However, he soon felt that something was off. There was a lot of animal droppings by the water's edge. After observing, Lu Chuan realized this was a flowing water area. Even in winter, some of the water still moved and didn't freeze completely, making it one of the few water sources available to animals during the season. This is a prime spot. Lu Chuan sighed inwardly. Chapter 3. Just as Lu Chuan was feeling excited, a voice suddenly came from the distance. Help! Help! It was a woman's voice, and it sounded somewhat familiar. Lu Chuan paused for a moment, then followed the direction of their voice. The sound was coming from below a cliff. The drop wasn't very high, only about 10 meters. A woman, wearing a cotton coat, was clinging to a rock with one hand, struggling to hold herself up. Chen Qingqing? Lu Chuan focused his gaze and realized that he recognized this woman. She was the daughter of Widow Wang in the village. Chen Qingqing's father was also a hunter in the village, but he had been killed by a giant insect during a hunting trip. After that, Widow Wang had been raising Chen Qingqing on her own, living a tough life. She was considered one of the poorer people in the village. Hearing the voice, Lu Chuan quickly looked up and saw Chen Qingqing. She immediately called out, "Lu Chuan, what are you doing here? Please, help me. Find something to pull me up. Wait a moment, I'll get a rope." Lu Chuan nodded. In such cold weather, why would Chen Qingqing be alone in the mountains, especially in such a dangerous place? But now wasn't the time to dwell on that. Lu Chuan found some tree vines in the forest, tied them together to make a rope, and lowered it down to the edge of the cliff. Chen Qingqing grabbed onto the rope like it was her last hope. She struggled but was pulled up by Lu Chuan. Although she was wearing a cotton coat, it was already in tatters, and some areas exposed her skin. She stood there, shivering, her face pale and frozen. "What are you doing here in such freezing weather?" Lu Chuan asked. Chen Qingqing gave an awkward smile. "My mother is sick, but we have no money for treatment or medicine. The food at home is needed for the annual food tax. I couldn't think of any other way, so I decided to come up the mountain, hoping to find some medicinal herbs. I never expected. I didn't find any herbs. And then I lost my footing and fell down the cliff." Lu Chuan nodded, but when he looked at Chen Qingqing again, he was surprised to see a panel above her head. Name, Chen Qingqing. Age, 16. Appearance, 94. Affinity, 47. Currently available upon taking in. Basic Chi Huang Technique. Basic Planting Technique. Basic Forging Technique. Intermediate Hunting Technique. Upon seeing this panel, Lu Chuan couldn't help but gasp. At the same time, he felt a deeper understanding of the panel. It seemed that only girls with a certain level of attractiveness could trigger the panel. Looking at the affinity, it appeared that 10 points of affinity would unlock a skill or technique. Based on the panel, it seemed that before reaching 30 affinity, only basic skills would be unlocked. After 30, intermediate skills would be available, and perhaps even advanced skills in the future. But these things still needed to be researched further. However, one thing that puzzled Lu Chuan was that Chen Qingqing's appearance could not possibly be rated at 94. She wasn't exactly unattractive, but she certainly wouldn't be considered beautiful. She could only be considered an average person. Could it be that the panel's aesthetic standards were different from those of regular people? Lu Chuan thought to himself, this girl is going to be tricky. Widow Wang might not agree. How should I take her in? The snow has sealed the mountain, and it's dangerous up here, he said. Chen Qingqing lowered her head, looking a bit upset. I know, but my mother. At this point, Chen Qingqing nervously fidgeted with the corner of her clothes. Lu Ji, do you have any money at home? If you do, could you lend me some? Lu Chuan felt a bit awkward. This girl really doesn't know how to make small talk, huh? My family probably doesn't have enough for anything. Today, the government sent someone to select brides. I accidentally offended the leader, so I was forced to choose two. This has already been recorded, and will soon have to pay the annual food tax. When that happens, my family will need to pay 3 portions. Lu Chuan scratched his head. If my family were a bit wealthier, I wouldn't have to go hunting. Lu Ji, you're hunting? Could you take me with you? I may not know how to hunt, but I have strength, and I can help carry things for you. When we get the catch, I'll just take a tenth. The herbs are hard to find, so I was thinking, if I could get some meat from hunting, maybe it would help my mother get better faster. Chen Qingqing said. You should go back and at least change into a cotton coat. Lu Chuan awkwardly pointed at her exposed shoulder. Chen Qingqing only then realized. She quickly tried to cover it up. But as soon as she did, her flat, fair belly was exposed again. Har! Lu Chuan laughed and took off his cloak, handing it to her. Put this on first. Go home and rest. If I catch anything, I'll send some to your house. What was he thinking? If he had such a burden following him, he wouldn't even be able to use his space properly. Lu Ji. You'll be cold without your cloak. Chen Qingqing said, worried. I'm fine, I'm wearing cotton clothes. The cloak was just to prevent snow. It looks like the snow won't fall for a while. Don't just stand there, hurry up and go back. After sending Chen Qingqing away, Lu Chuan stayed by the river for the rest of the afternoon. In that time, he managed to catch 2 wild rabbits and a pheasant that came to drink at the river. This was the benefit of guarding a respawn point. Lu Chuan felt a sense of joy in his heart. Before leaving, he drew some water from the river to wash away the blood stains on the bank. The animals in the forest were quite alert, and if they sensed the scent of blood, they might change their drinking spot. That should be enough for today. Lu Chuan opened his spatial storage and looked at the dumb roe deer, wild rabbits, and pheasant inside. He still felt a rush of excitement. The sense of harvest was incredible. He started to walk down the mountain along the same path he came. The sky gradually darkened. Just as Lu Chuan was heading down, he suddenly sensed something wasn't quite right. Not far from him, he saw 2 small creatures stumbling and rolling in the snow. As soon as they noticed someone approaching, they instantly arched their bodies and snarled toward Lu Chuan. 2 wolf pups. Lu Chuan's eyes gleamed as he quickly took a few steps forward. The 2 wolf pups instinctively retreated. Then, it seemed like they realized something, and they snarled again, their bodies arched high, as if ready to charge at him at any moment. Hey, these pups are pretty fierce. Chapter 4. However, no matter how fierce they were, the little wolf cubs posed no real threat to Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan approached them, gently grabbing the 2 wolf cubs. He found that they were struggling desperately. Using his beast-taming skill, Lu Chuan carefully calmed the 2 cubs. In just a short time, the 2 little wolves relaxed in his arms, gently bumping their heads against him, almost as if they were pleading for something. Lu Chuan paused, as if he understood something. He placed the 2 cubs on the ground. The cubs wobbled on their tiny legs, hopping toward a nearby thicket of dead trees. Lu Chuan followed them. Within the thicket, he discovered a young gray wolf with one of its legs severely injured and bleeding. It seemed to have broken its leg. Noticing Lu Chuan approaching, the gray wolf mustered the last of its strength and suddenly rose to its feet. Its eyes gleamed with hostility. It let out a low growl at Lu Chuan, seemingly warning him to stay back. Don't worry, I mean no harm. Lu Chuan extended his hand, slowly approaching the gray wolf. I just want to take a look at your wound. If treated quickly, you might still recover. In simple terms, whether it's a dog or a wolf, they have strong self-healing abilities. Most injuries can heal on their own. However, if they can't heal themselves, death is inevitable, especially in the wild, where a lack of food and nutrients can impact their healing abilities. The gray wolf seemed to sense that Lu Chuan had no ill intentions and relaxed. It stuck out its tongue, licking its wound. Seeing the gray wolf lower its guard, Lu Chuan cautiously moved forward and gently lifted the wolf's injured back leg. After inspecting it, he felt a bit more at ease. It didn't seem too serious, just temporarily incapacitated due to the fall. Thinking about this, Lu Chuan picked up a stick from nearby and hesitated for a moment. Then, he tore a strip of cloth from his shirt and carefully bandaged the grey wolf's wound. With the support, the grey wolf shakily stood up. The two cubs quickly ran over, cautiously nudging the grey wolf. The grey wolf looked up at Lu Chuan, its gaze filled with some hesitation. Lu Chuan began to consider whether he should use his beast-taming skill to directly tame the grey wolf. Just then, the grey wolf nudged its cubs with its head, pushing them toward Lu Chuan. It then looked back toward the forest, as if it had some unfinished business. Reluctantly, the two cubs crawled back into the grey wolf's embrace. The grey wolf nudged them again, followed by a somewhat affectionate growl. The cubs, looking unwilling, toddled towards Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan crouched down and gently cradled the cubs in his arms. "From today onward, you'll be with me." Once these wolf cubs grew up, they would definitely become his best assistants. With the cubs in his arms, Lu Chuan began walking down the mountain. The grey wolf carefully followed behind, limping slightly. However, it maintained a steady distance from him, limping at a slow pace due to its injured leg. As they were nearing home, Lu Chuan found a longer branch nearby. He chopped off all the smaller branches from it, then hung the wild chicken, wild rabbit, and dumb fawn at both ends of the branch. He swayed it gently as he made his way home. The grey wolf stopped on the mountain, standing proudly atop a rock. From there, it could clearly see Lu Chuan's home. Su Ruan and Bai Siyu heard the sounds and came out to check. They were stunned to see Lu Chuan returning, his arms laden with game. "You?" Su Ruan spoke in surprise. "You went up the mountain for less than half a day and came back with so much game. What's going on? When did hunting become so easy?" "Luck was on my side. I found a river that hadn't frozen yet. These were all animals drinking from it," Lu Chuan replied. As he spoke, he placed the game on the ground. "Today, let us stew this wild chicken." At that moment, Su Ruan and Bai Siyu's faces instantly turned red. They looked at Lu Chuan with some hesitation. We both can't cook." Lu Chuan raised his head, his mouth twitching slightly. It seemed that these two women were from noble backgrounds. After all, even the daughters of ordinary families nowadays had to learn some cooking skills. It was rare to find women who couldn't cook at all, especially those from prestigious families. Looks like he had really hit the jackpot. But don't worry. Bai Siyu's face was flushed, as though she had done something wrong. I'll learn. And I know women's crafts, like weaving and farming. I won't be a burden." Millimeter. Lu Chuan nodded. "Then, I'll cook today." In less than half an hour, a rich and fragrant chicken soup was placed on the table. Lu Chuan smiled, setting down his chopsticks and bowl. "Let me explain the current situation at home. In half a month, we'll need to pay the yearly grain tax. The grain tax is 1 stone of grain per person, which is about £100. So, in half a month, we need to pay £300 of grain. But right now, we only have £50 left," Lu Chuan said helplessly. "That's why, during this time, I need to hunt, sell some game, and exchange the money for more grain to pay the tax." At this moment, Bai Siyu's expression turned serious. £300 won't be enough. According to the information I've received, this year, the officials slightly changed the weight scale. Normally, 1 pound of grain would be 1 pound on the scale, but now, on the tax scale, it only counts as 8 ounces. She continued, "So, we'll need at least 375 pounds of grain to scrape by. If not, the tax collectors won't let you off easily." Bai Siyu's face was grave. Su Ruan was stunned. They actually dared to do something like that. Is that so surprising? Bai Siyu gave a bitter smile, opening her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but then shook her head and held back. Right now, grain prices are still high. 1 pound costs about 30 coins. Meat prices are around 100 coins per pound. Plus all the losses. You'll need to hunt at least 200 pounds of game to make up for this year's tax. Lu Chuan nodded. This was no exaggeration. The dumb fawn he brought back weighed about 50 pounds. It seemed heavy, but a lot of it was bones, and it needed to be drained of blood. In the end, only about half of it could be sold as meat. Whimper. At that moment, the little wolf cubs nearby made a soft, plaintive whimper, seemingly asking, "Where's my food?" Chapter 5. Su Wan looked at the blue wolf and suddenly felt a little amused, throwing the pheasant bones he had eaten on the ground. The blue wolf and the two wolf cubs immediately surrounded him. "You are so lucky. I just saw that blue wolf, it should be a wolf king, maybe after being injured, his cubs were expelled from the wolf pack," Su Wan said while teasing the wolf cub. "You can still see this. Well, I am a military general at home. I have some experience in these. Although this blue wolf looks down and out, it still has some aura of power without anger. Moreover, the general wolf king's cry will sound sharper than that of ordinary wolves, which is also convenient for the spread of sound, and can command the wolf pack faster and better." Lu Chuan nodded. He patted the wolf cub's head. "I didn't expect your father to be a wolf king." The wolf cub raised his head aggrievedly and glared at Lu Chuan, as if asking, "Why are you patting me?" However, in the end, he still lay there obediently. "If there is anything at home that needs our help, just ask." Su Wan is different from Bai Siyu. Su Wan looked at Lu Chuan generously. "I don't know much, but I can still do the job of hunting in the mountains. Just make me a bow, and the two of us will go hunting in the mountains. It shouldn't be a problem to get enough things we need in half a month." Bai Siyu lowered her head a little embarrassedly. In her opinion, coming to this family, in addition to causing trouble to Lu Chuan, there is no way to bring the slightest benefit. "Don't worry." Lu Chuan waved his hand. "You guys get used to it first." Lu Chuan looked at Bai Siyu in front of him. Name, Bai Siyu. Age, 16. Appearance, 91. Favorability, 48. Housing can get, elementary hunting skills already obtained, elementary beast control skills already obtained, elementary cooking skills, intermediate planting skills. There was a hint of surprise in Lu Chuan's eyes. Bai Siyu's favorability increased quite quickly. It can be seen that this woman is relatively simple. And Su Ruan's panel also showed some changes. Name, Su Ruan. Age, 17. Appearance, 89. Favorability, 29. Accommodation can be obtained, portable space, 3 cubic meters already obtained, basic kill firing skills. Seeing Su Ruan's, Lu Chuan felt a little surprised. Kill firing? What is this? Why does it sound so strange? With waves of warm current flowing into his body, Lu Chuan also reacted. This so-called kill firing skill is actually to make a kill that can fire porcelain or bricks and tiles. Good skills. With this skill, I can build a brick kiln by myself, and then burn some bricks. Then there is no need to live in this leaky earthen house. After eating, Lu Chuan returned to his room. Bai Siyu and Su Ruan looked at each other. They also returned to their west room. Sister Su Ruan, he seems to be. Bai Siyu opened her mouth, with a bit of worry in her eyes. Their identities are special. Although they are beautiful, who would be willing to marry them in ordinary farmers? They can't be lifted by hands or shoulders. Now they have finally found a home. Bai Siyu is really a little scared. After all, if Lu Chuan really doesn't want them, then their best ending is to be taken into the mansion by a powerful person and become a concubine or something. But it is highly unlikely that anyone would have such an idea because they are afraid of being implicated by their family affairs. Don't worry. Although Su Ruan was also worried in her heart. But she still patted Bai Siyu's hand. He is a good man, and he is also capable. We are lucky. And Lu Chuan was lying on the bed. He was thinking in his heart. Su Ruan was a descendant of a general, but he didn't want to take her with him when he went out hunting. To put it bluntly, there are too many secrets in my body, especially the existence of space. It is really difficult for me to use her with her by my side. If I hunt some small prey, it is not a problem. If it is a wild boar or something, I am afraid that I will be exhausted to death. Tomorrow, go to the town first and sell the raw deer meat. Then see where there is cheaper food. Submit the annual food. The food does not need to be too good. It is okay to be acceptable. The price of food in this era is much more expensive than expected. However, it is normal. The more famine the years, the more expensive the price of food, and the cheaper the price of human life. Maybe I was a little tired, and I fell asleep not long after lying down. I woke up the next morning. I found that Su Ruan and Bai Siyu had gotten up and cooked porridge. Moreover, they peeled off the skin of the silly roe deer. Seeing Lu Chuan wake up, Bai Siyu's cheeks were slightly red. Well, I saw that your clothes were thin, so I thought of using this roe deer skin to make you a warm coat, so that you can be more comfortable when you go hunting in the mountains. Well, you have worked hard. Lu Chuan nodded. The so-called porridge is actually white flour soup, not much oil, and with some pickled radish pickles, it is a meal. Although you feel full after eating, you will be hungry in a short time. I went to the town today and sold the meat. Do you have anything you need to bring? I will bring some back for you. Lu Chuan asked. Su Wan was stunned for a moment. Do you have a hatchet at home? I can go up the mountain to chop wood when I have nothing to do, otherwise, it is really a bit cold at home in this winter. Well, the hatchet is in the woodshed. Lu Chuan pointed to a low and broken house and said awkwardly. Oh, is that the firewood room? Su Wan covered her mouth. I thought it was an unused toilet. Bai Siu couldn't help laughing. Then he felt that something was not right, cleared his throat and said, Brother Lu, I need some needlework supplies, and a set of long needles for weaving. Ordinary people don't have looms. If you want to use cloth, you either buy it or weave it with long needles. And it's not silk thread, but linen. The woven clothes are fine to wear in summer, but in winter, they can only cover up the spring light. Okay. Lu Chuan remembered it in his heart. He used the wooden stick he brought back yesterday to hang the cut meat on both ends and went down the mountain along the path. However, Lu Chuan did not go directly to the town. Instead, he took a deity and came to the home of Widow Wang. I don't know how Widow Wang is now, and Lu Chuan is constantly thinking about how to take in Chen Qingqing. After all, the reward provided by this woman really made Lu Chuan very jealous. Chapter 6. R. At this moment, Chen Qingqing pushed open the door. Bumped into Lu Chuan. Chen Qingqing raised her head and her pretty face flushed when she saw Lu Chuan. Lu, brother Lu, why are you here? Didn't I promise you yesterday to send you some meat? How is Aunt Wang? Lu Chuan asked. Chen Qingqing sighed. Moved aside. Not bad, she ate something yesterday, but her high fever has not subsided. The room is cold, and I dare not wipe her body. Lu Chuan nodded. Put the stick and some other meat in the yard for the time being, and then entered the room. I found Aunt Wen leaning there, looking listless. She should have caught a cold. At this time, most people have to fight against illness. There are herbal medicine shops in the town, but not many people can see a doctor. Doctor is a precious profession, and it requires a master to take an apprentice for many years to achieve a certain achievement. Or their whole family is a doctor, passed down from generation to generation. Aunt Wang, I'm here to see you. While speaking, Lu Chuan put a hair in his hand there. I can ask Qingqing to make soup for you later. I'm going to the city this time to see if there are any herbs. If there are any herbs, I'll bring you some back. Lu Chuan. Aunt Wang raised her head, with a little touch of emotion in her eyes. However, there seemed to be a flash of vigilance in the depths of her eyes. This made Lu Chuan a little confused. Is the defense so strict? But is it useful for you to defend so strictly? Even if there is a goalkeeper, shouldn't the goal still be scored? Thank you, I didn't expect that you would come to see me in this village and bring me something. Widow Wang was touched. In recent years, many people have come to her door, and they are all very attentive. But since the arrival of winter, the situation this year is not good, and the grain harvest is poor. These people don't even show their faces. Instead, it was the young man Lu Chuan who came to see her. Although he knew some first aid measures in the wild, there were no herbs and nothing to use. Even if he knew what disease Wang Guafu had, it was not easy to treat. Thinking of this, Lu Chuan said, Okay, since the things have been delivered. Then I will leave first, I still have things to do. However, at this time, Lu Chuan's ears moved instantly. Then he suddenly pushed open the door. But he saw a person who looked like a skinny monkey carefully untied the robe meat on the pole and tiptoed out of the yard. Son lazy. Lu Chuan scolded and asked angrily, What are you doing? This man is called Sun Mian, a gangster in the village. He was idle on weekdays, and the people in the village suffered from him. He often liked to climb over the wall and steal things. Lu Chuan didn't expect that this Sun Lazy would steal from him. Damn. At this time, Sun Mian realized that he was discovered, and wanted to escape with the roe deer meat on his back. However, Lu Chuan would not give him this opportunity. 3 steps in 2. He caught up with Sun Mian. He grabbed his neck fiercely. Then he threw him heavily to the ground. Sun Mian roared, climbed up from the ground, pointed at Lu Chuan and cursed, "Lu Chuan, you dare to throw me." As he spoke, he pulled out a hatchet from his waist. "Do you believe that I will go in with a white knife and come out with a red knife, and stab you through?" Sun Mian held a hatchet in his hand. "Hey!" Lu Chuan showed a mocking smile at the corner of his mouth. "It's really strange. You stole my things and dared to be so confident. Who gave you the courage?" Lu Chuan tilted his head with a bit of mockery on his lips. What a joke! The previous Lu Chuan would be afraid of Sun Mian, but the current Lu Chuan is not afraid. "Fuck you!" Sun Mian suddenly became angry. He didn't understand why Lu Chuan, who had always been submissive, dared to disobey him like this. "Your things. I like this thing, so it's my thing." While speaking, Sun Mian held a hatchet in his hand and chopped at Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan seized the opportunity. Without any hesitation, slightly squatting down, he punched Sun Mian's kidney hard. When he was a mercenary, Lu Chuan learned the method of one-hit kill. As long as Lu Chuan was willing, it would be easy to kill Sun Mian. However, if he killed Sun Mian, he would be implicated. The government would not let him go. So, he chose a method that would damage him with external force. There would be no wounds on his body, but the damage to a man could be said to be irreversible. This was also one of his best methods. Ouch! Sun Mian howled in pain, with unprecedented anger in his eyes. His body was shaking constantly. Then he fell to the ground all of a sudden. Sun Mian felt that his body was like noodles, and it softened in an instant. "You!" Sun Mian wanted to raise the hatchet and threaten Lu Chuan. But he found that he could not use any strength in his body. Then, Lu Chuan grabbed Sun Mian's neck, a cruel smile appeared on his lips, and then he continued, "Sun Lazy, I remember that you extorted a lot of food from me before. You also stole my money. These food plus money, plus interest. A total of 1,000 coins, send it to my home tomorrow. Otherwise, it won't be so simple next time we meet." As he said, Lu Chuan patted Sun Mian's neck and took the roe deer meat off his shoulder. Then, he turned around and looked at Chen Qingqing. "I will throw him out directly. In addition, you'd better put some thorns around the wall, otherwise he can jump over at any time. It's not safe." "Hey!" Chen Qingqing nodded with some shame. "Thank you, Brother Lu." Lu Chuan waved his hand and threw Sun Mian out of the wall like garbage. Then he swaggered towards the town with the meat on his shoulder. The county town of Hongtu County is half an hour's walk from Shuangshui village. Because there is no car, he still has to walk there. He has to find a way to get a cow or a donkey to help him pull the cart. Horses are not easy to get. Nowadays, horses are regulated, especially war horses. It is as difficult as climbing to the sky for ordinary people to get a horse. After arriving in the county town, Lu Chuan did not find a place to set up a stall, but wandered around, without shouting or buying and selling, carefully observing. Finally, he stopped in front of a mansion that looked a little rich. Chapter 7. Put down the burden in your hand. He was not in a hurry, but waited quietly not far from the door. Not long after, a man who looked like a housekeeper came out swaggeringly. Lu Chuan's mouth curled up a smile. "Waiting for you? If you want to set up a stall in the market, you need to pay a management fee. In Bingju, various taxes and levies are already very harsh, especially for ordinary people. If you set up a stall privately without paying the management fee, if you are not caught, it's okay. Once you are caught, you will face a threefold penalty." So, Lu Chuan chose another relatively safe way to concentrate. "This gentleman." Lu Chuan walked up and greeted him, saying, "Are you the owner of this house?" Lu Chuan asked with a smile. The man who looked like a housekeeper waved his hand, somewhat helpless, but also somewhat happy. "Hey, what master? I don't look like a master, I'm just the housekeeper of the mansion." "Who are you?" the housekeeper asked in a somewhat strange tone. "So you're the housekeeper? I saw that you looked very imposing, and I thought you were the master of this family. I'm really sorry. What's your name, housekeeper?" The housekeeper straightened his clothes and cleared his throat. "My last name is Xu, and my name is Xu Hoxiang." The housekeeper said cheerfully, "You are quite interesting, young man. Tell me, what's the matter with stopping me?" "It's like this." Lu Chuan looked around, and then continued, "It's freezing cold now. I went hunting in the mountains some time ago, and accidentally shot a roe deer. You know, the meat of this thing is delicious. So I wanted to find a good buyer, and didn't I just meet you? I thought you were the master here, so I came to ask if the mansion needed it. Lu Chuan said. Xu Houxiang was stunned for a moment, and there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. Roe deer meat? Let me see. Lu Chuan opened the bag. After taking a look, Xu Houxiang continued to ask, well, the mansion does need it. How much? You tell me a number, if it's suitable, I'll buy it back. Xu Houxiang looked at the fresh roe deer meat and immediately became greedy. Lu Chuan nodded slyly. Butler Xu, what do you want me to say about this? This roe deer meat is no different from other beef and mutton. This meat is delicious, and if you stew it in soup, the soup is fresh and delicious, so the normal price is around 150 coins, you know this too. There are about 40 kilograms of roe deer meat here, I'll make the decision, 5,000 coins for you. Xu Houxiang waved his hand. He said impatiently, isn't this price too high? From what you said, this thing is really hard to get. Lu Chuan continued, now it's winter, roe deer don't come out much. Ordinary hunters may not have the luck to get such a good thing, right? Moreover, if you really want to buy it, I will sell it to the Xu family for 7,000 coins. Xu Houxiang looked at Lu Chuan and said angrily, you kid, are you really dishonest? You sold me a 5,000 coin thing for 7,000 coins. Go, go, go. While speaking, Xu Houxiang was about to drive Lu Chuan out. Butler Xu, you misunderstood. I sold it to you for 5,000 coins, but if I sell it to the Xu family, it will be 7,000 coins. Lu Chuan smiled, you take out 7,000 coins and give it to me, and I will give you the roe deer meat. Then, the remaining 2,000 coins are still yours. What do you think? In an instant, Xu Houxiang felt as if he had opened the door to a new world. Oh, it can be done this way. Xu Houxiang crossed his hands, then what about my previous ones? Hiss. Xu Houxiang's eyes suddenly lit up. After coughing twice, he carefully looked around. Boy, you really have a good brain. Okay, I see that the meat is fresh, and it is winter, and roe deer meat is really hard to find. 7,000 coins is 7,000 coins. This roe deer meat, I want it in the Xu mansion. You wait here, I will go into the mansion to get you the money. After that, Xu Houxiang left in a hurry. Lu Chuan also went through a careful calculation. To put it bluntly, if it is higher than 5,000 coins, Xu Houxiang may not be willing to take it. However, if the price is too high, the people in the Xu mansion may not want this roe deer meat. Therefore, it is necessary to find a relatively suitable price. About 170 coins. The price per pound will not be too expensive, and this thing is really hard to come by. The people of the Xu family will not hold onto this matter too much. To put it bluntly, even if it is greed for money, it is also a technical job. Less than a quarter of an hour later, Xu Houxiang ran out excitedly, holding a purse in his hand, and then handed it to Lu Chuan. Boy, take it. Here is 5,000 coins. This roe deer meat belongs to me. Our Xu family is big and powerful. If you catch any prey in the future, whether it is birds and beasts, or wild game, you can come to the Xu family to find me, just tell the servants to find Shusan, the steward. Xu Houxiang said carefully. Okay. Don't worry, there will be no problem. Lu Chuan nodded to Xu Houxiang, and then took out the wild rabbit in his other package while no one was around. He stuffed it into Xu Houxiang's hands. Butler Xu, this is what I hunted yesterday, and I'm honoring you. We will have many opportunities to cooperate in the future. Lu Chuan said with a smile. You kid, you will never be a fish in the pond in the future. Xu Houxiang was so happy when he saw the wild rabbit that he couldn't close his mouth, and then he continued, don't worry, since you treat me as a brother, I will definitely not let my brother suffer. Then, he looked around. He lowered his voice and said to Lu Chuan, recently, the third wife in the mansion has been feeling unwell. The doctor said that she is physically weak and cold. I prescribed a decoction, but there is something in it, badger meat, which is hard to find nowadays. It is being bought at a high price now. If you can get a badger, you can sell one for at least 5,000 coins. Xu Houxiang spoke again, brother, since you can kill a roe deer, it means you are a capable person. Why don't you go back in the next 2 days and try to get some? The mansion needs at least 3. Xu Houxiang told Lu Chuan the news he knew. Lu Chuan's eyes lit up, thank you very much, Butler Xu. I will go around the mountain when I go back. By the way, but Lashu, I have another question I want to ask you. Chapter 8. Where can I buy old grain around here? Shu Hoxiang glanced around. He whispered, old grain is really hard to find these days. While speaking, Shu Hoxiang showed some difficulty on his face. Except for some grain merchants, it is really hard to find old grain in the homes of wealthy families. And, to put it bluntly, the old grain on the market is actually sold as new grain. When you buy, you must also open your eyes and don't be fooled. Shu Hoxiang shook his head helplessly. If you want to buy cheap old grain, you may not be able to find it even if you go around the entire Hongtu County. And, if you buy old grain in such a high-profile way and let the government know. Shu Hoxiang stopped talking at this time. Instead, he looked at Lu Chuan meaningfully. Lu Chuan came back to his senses and instantly understood the meaning of Shu Hoxiang's words. I understand, thank you brother Shu for reminding me. You are a smart man, remember, in this day and age, if you want to survive, you must be careful and careful. After that, Shu Hoxiang left with the roe deer meat. Lu Chuan looked at Shu Hoxiang's back as he left and shook his head helplessly. His intuition told him that Shu Hoxiang must have a way in this regard. But whether the other party was kind or vigilant, he was definitely unwilling to tell him. It seems that it is not so easy to buy old grain. Throwing the money into the portable space, Lu Chuan walked towards the grain shop. He went to 3 grain shops in a row. He found that as Shu Hoxiang said, all the shops had new grain mixed with old grain. But they sold it at the price of new grain. Swindler! Lu Chuan cursed inwardly. Moreover, the price of new grain plus old grain was also sold according to the price of new grain, 50 coins per kati. Boss. Lu Chuan picked up the wheat that looked extremely shriveled lying in the bag. He asked. Boss, why is this wheat mixed with old and new grain? Hey, are you kidding? Where can you find so much new grain? Most of it is old grain. What should I do if I don't mix it with other grains? I can't just give up my business, right? The boss sat at the counter and raised his head unhappily and asked, buy it or not? Then you mix it with other grains and sell it at the price of new grains. It's a bit unfair. The boss waved his hands impatiently. Go, go, go. You think it's expensive, but I think it's expensive too. This year's weather is cold and dry, and the new grain harvest is poor. It's good to have old grain to eat. Lu Chuan was speechless for a moment. Why does this sound a bit strange? However, there is no rush for the grain. Let's see if there are other ways. Just about to go out. But he heard a familiar and arrogant voice. Boss, it's the end of the year. Then, an acquaintance walked in. The man was wearing a black uniform and had a sword on his waist, looking arrogant. Lu Chuan looked closely and found that he was the same policeman who had taken the women to the village. The policeman also noticed Lu Chuan at this time. He sneered and took out the sword from his waist. Hey, stinky boy, we meet again. It was a coincidence that Zhu Tong happened to be working nearby today and was bored, so he wanted to come to Kui Ji's grain shop to make some money and go to Tingfeng Tower to drink wine when he was off duty. Unexpectedly, when he just came here, he saw Lu Chuan here. When he thought that Lu Chuan had taken both beautiful ladies into his room. Now a day has passed. What should have happened should have happened. Thinking of this, Zhu Tong felt extremely heartbroken. What are you doing here? Zhu Tong said sarcastically, is there no food left at home? In less than half a month, the annual food tax will be paid, and your family needs to pay 3 stone of grain. Lu Chuan frowned. He didn't understand why Zhu Tong in front of him was so hostile to him. He had never provoked him before. In theory, the two of them should not interfere with each other. Even if he couldn't pay the annual food tax, he should not come to trouble him until half a month later. That's not something you need to worry about. Lu Chuan said lightly, and then continued, when the annual food tax is paid, I guarantee that not a single grain will be less. Come on. Zhu Tong heard that Lu Chuan was still stubborn, and his mouth twitched fiercely, and he shouted. Instantly, several Yarman runners rushed in from outside the door. I suspect this man is a Turkic spy. Take him back and interrogate him. Zhu Tong's mouth curled up with a smile. You little brat, you want to fight me? I have at least 100 ways to kill you easily. Thinking of this, Zhu Tong's eyes were a little excited. Lu Chuan frowned. This is troublesome. I am not afraid of Zhu Tong, but if I want to resist, the next trouble will follow. After all, the other party is a servant. Lu Chuan frowned and had an idea in his mind. Wait. You keep saying that I am a Turkic spy, what evidence do you have? Hearing this, Zhu Tong laughed out loud. Evidence? What I, Zhu Tong, say is evidence. Zhu Tong laughed loudly and said to the Yarman runner beside him, he actually wants evidence? Har har har. This is really the funniest joke I have heard in these years. Zhu Tong laughed so hard that tears almost came out. Lu Chuan, Lu Chuan. Are you stupid from farming? Do you want to make me laugh to death? The Yarman runner beside him also laughed so hard that he fell backwards. A faint smile appeared on the corner of Lu Chuan's mouth. Okay, I'll go with you. While speaking, Lu Chuan moved forward very obediently and looked at Zhu Tong with interest. Where is the prison? Let's go now. For some reason, at this moment, Zhu Tong's heart suddenly trembled. It seems that he sensed something wrong. He immediately became alert. What are you doing? I swear to God, I'm not doing anything. Lu Chuan said happily, Chariot Master Zhu feels sorry for me and wants to put me in jail to exempt my family from paying the annual food allowance for the year. I am overjoyed. Zhu Tong was stunned for a moment. Then he understood instantly. He glared at Lu Chuan fiercely. Lu Chuan is so cunning. As long as he is put in jail, he can say that he can't pay the annual food allowance because of him. If the superiors blame him, I'm afraid I can't escape the blame. The most important thing is that if the superiors really investigate, Lu Chuan is unlikely to be a spy of the Turks. Then I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to step down. When I thought of this, Zhu Tong was immediately scared and broke into a cold sweat. Chapter 9. But fortunately, this Lu Chuan is not very smart. He actually exposed his thoughts, so there is still room for recovery. Humph, you are lucky. I want to see, when you can't pay the annual food, what way can you escape? After saying this, Zhu Tong gently patted Lu Chuan's shoulder. Even if you pay the annual food, what will happen? I can still say that you are a Turkic spy. I want to see, when the time comes, what way can you save yourself? Lu Chuan smiled. Turkic spy? If you say so, then it is. If I say so, then it is, then see whether the county magistrate believes you or me, farmer. After saying this, Zhu Tong walked away. Lu Chuan's eyes narrowed slightly. It seems that I have to think of a way to get rid of Zhu Tong first. Although Zhu Tong can't bring too much trouble to me, if I really put myself in jail, I am afraid I will suffer some pain. It's true that the king of hell is aggressive and the little devil is difficult to deal with. Lu Chuan's eyes showed a touch of warmth. However, he kept thinking in his mind how to deal with Zhu Tong. He already had a rough plan in his mind. And this matter must be completed before paying the annual food. At this time, the shopkeeper of Kuiji grain shop came out in a hurry. This guest, please wait a moment. While speaking, Lu Chuan raised his head and looked at the shopkeeper in front of him. What else do you want? If you really need grain, and the batch is large, I can make the decision and give you 45 coins per catty, but this is also the price of new grain plus old grain. But don't worry. With this market this year, you have traveled all over Hongtu County. I'm afraid no other family can give you the same price. The shopkeeper said with a smile. Lu Chuan was stunned for a moment. But then he understood. Damn, this shopkeeper is really a smart person. Through his conversation with Zhu Tong just now, he knew that he needed food, and it was very likely that he needed 300 kilograms, or even more, so at this time he changed his indifferent attitude just now and wanted to do business with him directly. This price is a bit expensive. Lu Chuan shook his head. I'll think about it. After that, he turned and left. The shopkeeper looked at Lu Chuan's back, shook his head helplessly, and sat back in his seat again. Alas, things are unpredictable. I don't know if this person can survive in the end. No one who has been targeted by Zhu Tong has been able to get a good ending so far. After Lu Chuan left Kuiji grain shop, first, he went to a cloth shop and bought 10 pieces of cloth, and then bought some small things for weaving. As for the blacksmith shop, there is no need to go there at all. In this era, iron is a controlled item. Even if you make farm tools, you need to register with the government. If you hide iron tools privately, you will be caught by the government. That would require imprisonment. Therefore, the bows and arrows that Lu Chuan has been using until now are still wooden bows and wooden arrows, but the range of his wooden bows and wooden arrows is not short. Su Ruan at this moment. looking at the bow hanging behind the door. There is a hint of desire in his eyes. Like it? Seeing Su Ruan's look, Bai Siyu said helplessly, if you like it, let the boss make one for you some other day. It seems that the method of making this bow is not very complicated. You don't understand. Su Ruan shook his head slightly. It seems that he has made a great determination and took the bow down from behind the door. After carefully stroking it in his hand, he continued, this bow looks simple, but it's not that easy. If you have a good bow body, good materials, and good bowstrings, then it's not that difficult to make a good bow. The most difficult thing in this world is to make an ordinary thing extraordinary. This is just ordinary wood, or even the lowest grade straw rope. But it can make such a bow. There are definitely some steps that we can't imagine. Su Ruan is a descendant of a general after all. So, he instinctively likes these weapons, and can say a thing or two about them. Bai Siyu nodded slightly when he heard this. There was a bit of surprise in his eyes, and then he asked, now that you say that, I seem to understand. Swish. Su Ruan gently pulled the bowstring, and a very crisp sound came out. It seems that we are really lucky to meet such a person in this place. It's a pity that we met him at this time. Otherwise, I must find a way to pull him into the army. Lu Chuan bought some daily necessities. The house is now bare and windy. In this winter, we need to buy some heating things. Otherwise, I am afraid it will be difficult to survive this winter. Lu Chuan bought 3 quilts with a hard heart. Damn, the price is too terrible. A quilt costs 500 coins. 3 quilts cost 1,500 coins directly, and this is the result after Lu Chuan bargained. Moreover, this quilt is very different from the quilts in later generations. It is extremely thin, but it can barely keep out the cold. In addition to the other things he bought, he actually spent 2,000 coins. After preparing all the things he bought, Lu Chuan returned. Su Ruan's previous estimate of the price of grain was inaccurate. He would go to the mountains again tomorrow and find a way to get more things. The most important thing was that if he could get some badgers, there would be nothing to worry about. Boss, you're back. Lu Chuan returned home. Su Ruan and Bai Siyu came out. I don't know what she just said, but Bai Siyu's cheeks were full of blush. She looked at Lu Chuan shyly and lowered her head. Yeah. Lu Chuan took the quilt off the shoulder pole and handed it to Su Ruan and Bai Siyu, and then said, these 2 quilts are for you. When I have free time one day, I will repair our house. The conditions at home are not good, I'm sorry for you. Lu Chuan said. For a moment, Su Ruan and Bai Siyu's tears fell instantly. Bai Siyu hurried forward, boss, if it weren't for you, the 2 of us would have already. You saved us. But we dragged you down. Bai Siyu's voice was trembling. Then, he mustered up his courage, boss, are you not satisfied with us? Chapter 10. Lu Chuan put the things in the house. He asked in surprise, why do you ask? Bai Siyu's cheeks flushed, we are already yours, why do you? Bai Siyu didn't continue. Instead, he rubbed the corner of his clothes with some lack of confidence. At this time, Su Ruan on the side said carelessly, we are all children of the underworld, just speak your mind. If you really look down on us, or have any other concerns, we will leave now. Leave? Lu Chuan laughed, where to go? It's very simple, I will knock you out, and then you just need to tell the government that the 2 of us have escaped. As for the 2 of us, you don't need to worry. Su Ruan gritted her teeth and said hard, at worst, the 2 of us will become bandits. Hearing this, Lu Chuan shook his head helplessly, okay, don't say these depressing words. I know what you mean. I have nothing to be dissatisfied with you, 2 beautiful wives like this. I can't wait to be happy, but the most important thing right now is to solve the problem of food. And you have to be well fed and clothed. Lu Chuan smiled and said, what's more, if the love between 2 people lasts for a long time, why should we be together day and night? We have a long way to go. After Lu Chuan finished speaking, he didn't give the 2 people a chance to speak. I'm going to cook. I've been running all day and I'm starving. Su Ruan blushed when she heard this. Bai Siyu was stunned, as if he was struck by lightning. If love lasts forever, why should we be together day and night? Is this Lu Chuan really just an ordinary farmer? Bai Siyu looked at Lu Chuan with his eyes, and was a little confused for a moment. Name, Bai Siyu. Age, 16. Appearance, 91. Favorability, 55. Sheltering can get, primary hunting skills already obtained, primary beast control skills already obtained, primary cooking skills already obtained, intermediate planting skills already obtained, intermediate beast control skills. Did Bai Siyu's favorability suddenly increase? Lu Chuan looked at Su Ruan on the side. Name, Su Ruan. Age, 17. Appearance, 89. Favorability, 40. Taking someone in will get you 3 cubic meters of portable space already acquired, elementary kill firing skills already acquired, elementary night vision ability, space expansion of 3 cubic meters. What the hell? Su Ruan's favorability has exceeded 40. After bringing Su Ruan back, Lu Chuan found that Su Ruan, the so-called descendant of a general, had the slowest growth in favorability. However, the benefits it brought were actually the best. Let's not talk about the portable space. The elementary night vision ability of this third person is also very terrifying. Sometimes, a person's vision can determine a lot of things. It can even save a life at a critical moment. And when the favorability reaches 40, it is actually another space expansion. Lu Chuan felt that he was so happy. And Bai Siyu provided him with an intermediate beast control skill. This happened to be a skill that he could use. Coming to the kitchen, Lu Chuan simply made some food. A family of 3 sat at the table. That's right. Lu Chuan seemed to have thought of something and asked, "Do you know Ju Tong?" Ju Tong. Su Ruan and Bai Siyu looked at each other and asked in confusion, "Is it the policeman who escorted us?" "Yeah." Lu Chuan took a bite of the food and smiled bitterly. "I met him on the street today." He then told what happened today. After listening, Su Ruan frowned deeply. "Do you have a grudge against him?" "I'm afraid it's because of us." Bai Siyu smiled bitterly and then continued, "If it weren't for us, the boss wouldn't have suffered such an unexpected disaster." "What does it have to do with us?" Su Ruan asked after realizing it belatedly. Bai Siyu smiled bitterly. "Haven't you seen it clearly? Ju Tong has been looking at us with lustful eyes all the way. I think if no one chooses us, then he can. He actually has such a thought." Su Ruan slammed the table. "This man is really hateful." "Boss." At this time, Bai Siyu cleared his throat. "So-called, my family used to be well off, but now, it has suffered a disaster. It is no longer the same as before. Moreover, the so-called county magistrate is not as good as the current one. After all, Jutong is in charge of Hongtu County, so we still have to find a way to solve this matter. Otherwise, not only will he tamper with the annual food, but our lives in the future may also be difficult." Bai Siyu said very seriously. Lu Chuan nodded. "Keep this in mind." Su Ruan looked at the bow on the wall. "Boss, lend me this bow, and I will help you solve this problem in 2 days." "Good guy. You are the mercenary, right? How come you are more murderous than me?" Before Lu Chuan could speak, Bai Siyu hurriedly shook his head. "This matter is not that simple. It is easy to kill Ju Tong, but if there is no one behind Ju Tong, he would not dare to be so arrogant. Even if you want to kill Ju Tong, you have to get rid of him secretly. Don't get into trouble. Not to mention our bows and arrows." Su Ruan felt a little cumbersome when she heard this. "Oh, why is it so troublesome?" "Boss, if you need me to do anything, just tell me. We are children of the rivers and lakes, I will never refuse to help." Lu Chuan curled his lips. "What a child of the rivers and lakes. Those who know you think you are a descendant of a general, and those who don't know you think you are a bandit." That night, Su Ruan and Bai Siyu were lying on the bed. Covered with 2 quilts, the 2 people came together and added some warmth to each other with their bodies. In this winter, the 4 peaks intertwined in pairs, which was a unique flavor. "You said, is the head of the family really just an ordinary farmer? He can hunt, work, and seems to know how to read and write?" Bai Siyu asked. "Know how to read and write?" Su Ruan asked half a beat later. "Why do you think so? If the love between 2 people lasts for a long time, why should they be together day and night? How can an ordinary person write such a poem?" Su Ruan finally understood, and her eyes lit up, and then continued, "Now that you put it that way, it seems that these 2 sentences do seem to be more artistic and flavorful than those I heard before." The 2 hugged each other and said intimate words. In the middle of the winter night, the cold wind was howling outside. Lu Chuan had a headache. There were too many things to do. He wanted to repair their house, but the prerequisite was to kill enough prey. So, tomorrow, he still had to go into the mountains. Chapter 11. Early in the morning of the next day, Lu Chuan got up. He came to the yard and first did a set of boxing. He learned Xingyiquan. As the saying goes, if you don't go out for 10 years of Tai Chi, you can kill people in 1 year of Xingyiquan. He was a mercenary before, in order to quickly resolve the battle. In a word, Kung Fu is a killing skill. Every move and every style he learned is a killing move. When practicing boxing, it was sonorous and powerful, and the wind of the fist was gusty. Half an hour later, Lu Chuan got up and went to the kitchen to cook some food. At this time, Su Wan and Bai Siu also woke up. "Boss, you can teach us how to cook in the future. You have to go out hunting every day and worry about the family affairs. It's too tiring. We can also help you share the burden," Bai Siu said. At this time, Su Wan's eyes lit up. "Are we going out hunting? I'll go with you." "No need." Lu Chuan shook his head. "There is a man at the head of the village, his name is Sun Mian, we all call him Sun Lazy. There are some conflicts between the two of us. When I go out, it's not safe for Bai Siu to be alone at home. After all, you are descendant of a general, a child of the rivers and lakes. Stay at home, you can protect Bai Siu." While talking, 2 little wolf cubs ran out. One of them was heartlessly having fun in the yard, while the other was sitting there arrogantly, looking at Lu Chuan with his eyes, ready for battle. "Okay." Su Wan heard this and no longer insisted. But he looked at the little wolf cubs. "Last night, I discussed with Xiao Bai's sister. I plan to give these 2 little guys a name. You are the head of the family, what name do you think is better?" Su Wan asked. Lu Chuan was stunned for a moment and looked at the little wolf cubs on the ground. Lu Chuan pointed at the wolf cub who was having fun. "This one, let's call it brainless." Then he looked at the one sitting there waiting for battle. "As for this one, let's call it unhappy." Bai Siu and Su Wan were stunned for a moment, as if they couldn't believe it. "What kind of name is this? I've never heard such a weird name before. Didn't Bai Siu say that Lu Chuan was very cultured? The boss got this name." Bai Siu didn't know what to say for a moment, and said with a wry smile, "It's really different. Okay, I'll go up the mountain first." After saying that, Lu Chuan took the bow and arrow behind the door, and then went up the mountain with 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow. The heavy snow had stopped, and he was on the mountain, constantly looking for some less obvious caves, which were usually covered by dead trees or dead leaves. Animals like badgers are more cunning. It is not so easy to catch it. Even experienced hunters will be defeated in front of this kind of animal. Moreover, although the badger is not big in size, but it is very strong and flexible. It is often surrounded by a group of hunters, but it can escape in one direction. In addition, badger meat is hot and very dry, and most people don't like to eat this kind of thing. So hunters don't like to hunt this kind of thing. Sometimes it is because of fate that you will hunt such a thing. Hard work pays off. Soon, Lu Chuan found that there was a cave entrance covered by dead trees in a valley. He hurried over, carefully measured the size of the cave entrance, and then observed the situation next to the cave entrance. "It seems that I am lucky today. This thing should be inside." Lu Chuan was not in a hurry. He piled some dead trees, dead leaves, and messy things at the entrance of the cave. Finally, he followed the valley and searched carefully. Finally, at the other end of the call, he found a cave of almost the same size. "That's it." He returned to their high ground first, looked carefully at both sides, and roughly estimated the distance between the 2 caves and the path inside. No matter what animal digs a hole, it is rare to go straight. However, different animals have different habits when digging holes. Experienced hunters can judge the general situation inside the cave by the shape of the mountain. After doing all this, Lu Chuan returned to the first cave he had found before. He picked up some wet wood and wet leaves from the side and blocked the position of the cave. He picked up the flint and started a fire. When the fire was completely burned, he covered the fire with more wet leaves. A burst of thick smoke immediately drilled into the cave. When Lu Chuan saw the thick smoke, he blocked the cave with a few stones. Then he quickly returned to the high ground of the col, holding a bow in his hand, with an arrow, staring at it seriously. Time passed by minute. Lu Chuan narrowed his eyes. He stared at it seriously, not daring to relax at all. At the same time, he counted his breaths very seriously. He felt that the time was almost up. Lu Chuan instantly pulled his bow to its full length, and then stared at the second hole with his eyes. In less than a moment, a black shadow ran out of the second hole. The speed was extremely fast. And Lu Chuan was even faster. The arrow in his hand seemed to have eyes, and went towards the black shadow. Bang! The arrow instantly sank into the body of the black shadow. The black shadow felt pain and hurriedly ran away. But Lu Chuan did not hesitate at all. He bent his bow and shot the arrow again. The whole process was smooth. Before the black shadow could react, the second arrow and the third arrow also sank into its body. He struggled violently. However, the flow of blood soon took away all the strength in its body. It didn't run a few steps. It fell there. Lu Chuan let out a long sigh. Fortunately, it seems that the primary hunting skills are still enough. However, if Chen Qingqing's intermediate hunting skills can be obtained, then it will be stable. Lu Chuan just used 3 arrows for safety. One of the reasons is that badgers are very fast, and because of their small size, they can easily get into other caves. At that time, even if you kill them, they will die in other caves, and it will be difficult for you to pick them up. Lu Chuan walked over, picked up the badger, and took off the arrow on it. Then he threw it into the space casually. Continue to search. Badgers are still relatively common in the mountains, but they hide in winter. If you want to fight, you must learn to distinguish badger holes. The entrances of the general caves are hidden and relatively secretive, which depends on the hunter's experience. But the luck seemed to have run out. After hunting this badger, 2 hours later, Lu Chuan still didn't find another badger hole. And he was already hungry. He took out a pancake from the space and started to eat it. However, at this moment, he suddenly realized that something seemed to be staring at him. Chapter 12. Lu Chuan became alert instantly. He didn't dare to hesitate, climbed up a tree first, and then observed the movements around him. Anyone who hunts. The ability to climb trees must be strong. Of course, whether it is a blind bear or a tiger, they can climb trees. The reason for climbing high is that they need to see the surrounding environment clearly. Moreover, the blind bear and tiger climbing trees are actually relative. They all rush up with absolute strength. If we really talk about climbing trees, there are not many who can be stronger than the terrifying upright ape. Standing on the tree. The field of vision is wide. In the distance, 2 wild boars are foraging there. This gave Lu Chuan a headache. He didn't have many arrows left, probably only about 10. Wild boars have thick skin and flesh. Even if a small caliber bullet hits it, it can't cause much damage to it, not to mention the bow and arrow in his hand. 10 arrows. To deal with 2 wild boars. It's really not very useful. Even if the arrow hits the wild boar, it can only make the wild boar fall into a violent mode. It will be more difficult at that time. If there is only 1 wild boar, he can still do it, but 2 wild boars are too risky. However, just leave like this? Lu Chuan was a little unwilling. Although wild boar meat is not delicious, there is not much meat in these years, and large-scale animal husbandry has not risen. Most of the people who can eat meat can only do it in the big families. Most people only raise sheep or chickens and ducks. In fact, there is not enough oil and water. It's tricky. Lu Chuan supported his forehead in silence, thinking about countermeasures. These wild boars should have come here to smell the human scent. Their noses kept humping there, searching all the time. Lu Chuan sat on a tree branch, watching the 2 wild boars quietly. After pondering for a moment, he decided to deal with one of them first. Thinking of this, he bent his bow and drew his arrow. Everything was done almost instantly. Squeak! Accompanied by the wild boar's painful wailing, the wild boar quickly turned on the violent mode, and its body rushed out in an instant, at a very fast speed. It even directly broke a small tree as thick as a bowl. The other wild boar had no idea what was going on, but it instinctively sensed the danger, and did not dare to hesitate, and quickly fled to the distance. Lu Chuan's eyes were fixed on the wild boar in his hand. Then he bent his bow and drew his arrow again, shooting at its head again. The wild boar felt the pain and roared violently. The snow was covered with blood. However, the wild boar was so fast that it was out of Lu Chuan's sight in the blink of an eye. There was only a layer of blood on the snow. The corners of Lu Chuan's mouth twitched fiercely. Damn! It was safe to hit the wild boar in the tree, but there was no way to catch up. However, the 2 arrows he had just shot were aimed at the wild boar's forehead, so there shouldn't be too much of a problem. But he knew the physical strength of the wild boar. Even if there were 2 fatal injuries, it would be no problem for the owner to run a few miles away. Especially for something like a wild boar. It was very normal for it to fall off a cliff or get lost in other places while rushing around. So, he had to keep up. Following the bloodstains on the ground, Lu Chuan followed them all their way and buried them all their way. Avoid attracting other things. Soon, Lu Chuan came to a cave entrance. The cave entrance was about half a person's height and did not seem to be very deep. The bloodstains disappeared at this time, and the wild boar should have died in the cave. He did not act on his own. If it is not necessary, do not go into this kind of wild cave on the mountain alone, because no one knows what is inside. Wild boar caves are not like badgers, which have 2 openings. Generally, there is only one entrance and exit for wild boar caves. Moreover, most wild boar caves are not too deep, but there may be several wild boars living in them. It is relatively easy to distinguish. Lu Chuan used the same trick again. Put leaves and some wet branches at the entrance of the cave and carefully ignite them with flint. The wild boar did not come out. It seems that it should have died in the cave. However, after a while, 3 little wild boars rushed out from inside. Lu Chuan was quick and quickly took down the 3 wild boars. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes. This was really a pleasant surprise. Originally, Lu Chuan wanted to raise a few piglets, but he didn't expect that after following the wild boars all their way back, he actually met 3 wild boars. The piglets struggled fiercely in Lu Chuan's hands. And Lu Chuan didn't hesitate at all. A pair of big hands pressed against the piglet. A faint halo silently penetrated into the piglet's body. In an instant, the piglet seemed to feel something, and its struggling body gradually relaxed. It really works. The primary beast taming skills are not so magical. The primary beast taming skills still need to be tamed, but the intermediate beast taming skills directly skip this stage. It's not as magical as you imagine, but it will make the wild beast you tame gradually feel close to you, and will not feel the threat from you. Lu Chuan said to the 3 little pigs. Wait for me here for a while, I'll come out soon. As he spoke, Lu Chuan crouched and got in little by little. A strong stench spread, which made Lu Chuan cover his nose involuntarily. Then, he found that the cave was bigger than he imagined, and it didn't seem to be a standard wild boar cave. It looked like it had some traces of artificial excavation. I just don't know why, but it was later occupied by this wild boar. There are traces of wild boars living here. He found a dead wild boar in the corner, and then stretched out a hand and put it on the wild boar. He took the wild boar directly into his space. This wild boar looked at least 300 pounds. Now, he really made a fortune. Then, Lu Chuan observed the cave with some surprise. There were some traces of knife and axe on the cave, but these traces looked rather hasty, and the cave was covered with all kinds of weeds. It should be that the wild boars used this place as a nest later. Feel the structure of the cave. Lu Chuan started to work. He moved these messy things out. This place was at least an hour away from his home, and he planned to make it his own hunting base. Chapter 13. It took a lot of effort to throw out all the weeds and mess in the cave. Lu Chuan looked around. Somewhat helplessly, I went outside and picked up some branches again. Even got a few logs. After carrying it back to the cave, light it. The cave needs to be a little drier. At the same time, it also needs to be sterilized. As the temperature in the cave rose, 3 little pigs ran in. They seemed to be very curious and did not feel any fear at all that their mother was gone. With the help of weak light, Lu Chuan discovered something rather strange. There was actually a picture drawn on the north wall of the cave. This picture looks a bit strange, as if it is somewhat like a map. Hiss. However, this map is not complete, and the drawing is also incomplete. It seems to be just a corner. Lu Chuan had some guesses in his mind. This should be someone hiding something special, and then drawing maps separately in the mountains. Only by combining these maps can we really find this thing. I just bumped into one of them by accident. Who could it be? Are you from Shuangshui village? This place is relatively remote. Except for the people from Shuangshui village, few other people come here. This time, Lu Chuan hesitated, wondering whether he should transform this place into his own base. If this place was not a cave dug by wild boars or an abandoned cave by other people, it would be quite dangerous. thought about it for a long time. Lu Chuan decided to give up. However, he carefully memorized the map on the wall. After making sure that he could copy the map when he got home, he picked up a stone and destroyed the map on the wall. Then, he took the piglet and walked towards home. However, along the way, he also made some traces of dragging the wild boar, and when he was almost home, he managed to get the wild boar out of his space. Then, he found a piece of wood and a rattan rope. Place the boar on top. Drag him towards home. Xiao Bai, Su Ruan. Lu Chuan shouted, "Come out and help. Here it comes." Su Ruan heard the sound and ran out of the house in a hurry. When he saw the wild boar that Lu Chuan was dragging, he seemed to be in disbelief, and then hurriedly said, You killed a wild boar. Yeah, good luck." Lu Chuan smiled, and then sat down. "I am so tired. Drag the wild boar into the yard first." "Is there anything wrong at home?" Lu Chuan asked. Su Ruan nodded, "Nothing, but Sister Xiaobai taught me some needlework, but I'm stupid and learn slowly." "It's okay. Drag this wild boar back first. Hurry up and drain the blood. Once the blood seeps into the meat, it will be hard to sell." "Good." Su Ruan nodded. After dragging the wild boar into the yard, Lu Chuan put the wild boar on the stone table in the yard, then took out a wooden basin and carefully placed it next to it. Pig blood is a good thing. If cooked well, it tastes just as good as meat. "You are so awesome. How did you do it?" Su Ruan asked. Lu Chuan smiled, and then took out the 3 little piglets from his arms. It was not easy to let these 3 little piglets follow him, and they were still small, so Lu Chuan simply stuffed them into his arms. "Wait until you get home to take it out. This wild boar has been sold. The meat should be enough for this year's New Year's Eve dinner. As for these 3 little piglets, just keep them at home." At this time, Su Ruan was stunned for a moment. "Keep it at home? I'm afraid it won't work, right? This thing has been tried in the mansion before. But wild boars are small when they are young, but once they grow big, they become wild. If they are put together, they will easily bite each other, and in the end, they may even die together." Lu Chuan laughed. "This is normal, and there are more than just this one disadvantage to raising wild boars. The smell of wild boars is still very pungent. It's okay if you kill them and sell them for money. But if you eat the meat, you may feel good for 1 or 2 meals, but if you eat it for a long time, you will feel sick. Rest assured." Lu Chuan smiled and said, "This problem is relatively easy to solve. Just kill these 3 wild boars." After that, he smiled and said, "Besides, wild boars are relatively easy to feed. They can eat whatever we normally eat, and they can just eat some leftovers. As for drinking, they can just drink some water from washing pots. Just fan it." Su Ruan was a little surprised at this time. Lu Chuan handed the hatchet in his hand to Su Ruan. "Yes, that's right, so this difficult and arduous task is handed over to you. I will start bleeding this wild boar first." After saying that, Lu Chuan stabbed the wild boar directly into its carotid artery with his knife. The blood immediately flowed along the blade into the wooden basin. The bright red blood continued to drip. Su Ruan took the 3 little pigs back into their house, apparently to study how to fan the pigs. While bleeding the boar, Lu Chuan began to skin the wild boar. Shave the meat. To be honest, this is a rather tedious job. I'm busy. A voice came from outside the yard. "Hey, Lu Chuan, did you kill a wild boar?" Lu Chuan heard the familiar voice, looked up and found it was the village chief. Bai Siyu and Su Ruan looked around but did not go out. When the head of the household deals with outsiders, they need to stay away. "Yes. Village chief." Lu Chuan smiled, and then said helplessly, "As you know, the annual food tax is about to be paid, and my family is in a bad situation, so I thought of going up the mountain to try my luck, but I didn't expect that I would actually encounter it." "What brings you here?" Lu Chuan asked with some confusion. "He lives quite far away, and the village chief won't come when there's nothing else to do. If there is anything you need, just shout at the bottom of the mountain and they will notify you." Lu Chuan felt a little strange about the sudden visit today. Well, something happened. At this point, the village chief looked at Lu Chuan, and then continued, "Did you give some meat to Widow Wang yesterday?" Lu Chuan did not hide it. "I happened to see Chen Qingqing, and knew that Widow Wang was ill, so I sent some over first." "That's right." The village chief rubbed his hands in embarrassment and said, my family hasn't had any meat for a long time. I heard that you hunted something, so I wanted to come over and see if you could give some to my family. Chapter 14. Lu Chuan heard this. Nodded. No problem, wait till I finish bleeding, and then I'll cut you a piece of meat. The village chief usually takes good care of himself, so it's just 2 pounds of meat, so Lu Chuan wouldn't be too stingy. The village chief laughed awkwardly twice and carefully took out $100 from his pocket. This string of strings costs 200 coins. Just weigh 2 kilograms for me later. Although the approximate price of meat in towns is 100 coins, you need to run back and forth to buy it. Moreover, in that era, meat was actually a relatively luxurious item. Sometimes when you went to the market, you found that it was not sold at all. Ultimately, it is because animal husbandry has not developed. Most butchers don't have a stable source of meat. Any slightly more stable sources will be monopolized by major restaurants and the like. Ensure the normal operation of the restaurant. While Lu Chuan was busy, he started chatting with the village chief. The village chief is called Sun Ji. He has received education but failed to pass the imperial examinations. However, I do know a lot about some things in the county and towns. That's right. At this moment, Lu Chuan suddenly thought of something and asked, "Do you know Ju Tong?" Ju Tong. Sun Ji was stunned for a moment, then he pondered for a moment. This name sounds familiar. It's the officer who brought the woman into the village earlier. Sun Ji suddenly realized. I actually know him. He is the nephew of the magistrate of Hongtu County. He sought a job as a yarman runner in the government. He is usually arrogant and domineering, and he does things without thinking. I know the county magistrate. We once studied in the same private school, but we are not close friends. Sun Ji said awkwardly. Then, some strange inquiries. Why are you asking this suddenly? Nothing. Lu Chuan smiled, but at the same time he became alert. This weak Tong is really in some trouble. Can I ask who the county magistrate of Hongtu County is? Lu Chuan asked again. Bai Siyu was also listening attentively in the room. This county magistrate's name is Zhu Zheng. Sun Ji nodded and said. At this moment, Lu Chuan's bloodletting work was completed. He cut off some meat from the pig's hind leg, estimated to be about 5 pounds, and handed it to Sun Ji, saying, Village chief, your meat. The corner of Sun Ji's mouth twitched violently. Pork, pork. Oh, yes, your pork. Lu Chuan spoke again. Sun Ji took a deep breath. I kept telling myself in my heart that the other party was just a crude farmer and there was no need to bother with him. Then, he said somewhat awkwardly, this is a bit too much. We are all fellow villagers. You take care of me so well. You can take the remaining food back. After all, there are 4 or 5 people in your family. Lu Chuan said happily. Sun Ji opened his mouth. It seems like he wants to refuse. However, in the end, he shook his head with some disappointment, carried the meat, and walked down the mountain dejectedly. Lu Chuan looked in the direction where Sun Ji left. My mind is full of thoughts. To be honest, the old man was a little unwilling in his heart, or rather, he still held out hope. However, the world would not show him any kindness, and for someone like him who did not achieve anything in his studies, this would probably be the end of his life. Boss. I know this Zhu Zheng. At this time, Bai Siyu came out with a serious look in his eyes, and then he continued, this person is a bit strange. Strangeness? Lu Chuan asked in surprise. How strange is that? The entire Bingju officialdom, from top to bottom, big and small officials, has changed a lot in 10 years. This Zhu Zheng is an outlier. He is a county magistrate and has had several opportunities to be promoted. But he is not willing to be promoted at all. In the past 10 years or so, he has served as a county magistrate in many places in Bingju, and he has no intention of moving up. Every time I have an activity, I want to go to another place. Moreover, he works diligently and is not greedy or corrupt. He is an outlier in the entire Bingju officialdom. Bai Siyu shook his head slightly, but my father once commented on Zhu Zheng, saying that this person is deep-minded and has hidden things. So he must not be underestimated. Lu Chuan frowned slightly. Vaguely, I sensed that something was not right. New. As he spoke, Lu Chuan said to Bai Siyu, get me a basin of cold water. Good. Bai Siyu nodded hurriedly. Bring out a basin of cold water. Lu Chuan took 2 clean branches and poured the cold water little by little into the container containing the pig blood. Then he turned to Bai Siu and said, "Give me a little salt, too." Pour in the salt while stirring constantly. As the pig blood cools down little by little. Lu Chuan also let out a long sigh, and then waited for the pig's blood to solidify. After solidification, the pig's blood can be eaten by himself or sold in the town. This can also be considered a craft. The sun has just set at this moment. Lu Chuan first made some simple food. Then he started working in the courtyard again. He first found 2 baskets and brought back some lures from the foot of the mountain. Then, while there was still a little light, he went into the woods to look for some pine needles and other coarse fibrous plant hairs. "Boss." Su Ruan saw this scene, and a hint of surprise appeared in her eyes. Then she asked, "What are you doing?" "I plan to build a brick kiln, burn some bricks, and repair our house." These days, there was no cement or reinforced concrete, the only things available were mud and bricks. Of course, wealthy families would use slate, wood, lime, etc. Build a brick kiln. Su Ruan asked in surprise, "You also know this?" "I know a lot of things." Lu Chuan smiled and said, "You will know later." Su Ruan's cheeks turned slightly red, and then she asked expectantly, "Boss, can you make me a bow?" "The kind you use will do." I don't know how to do anything else." "After thinking it over, I think it's better for me to accompany you to the mountains to hunt." Su Ruan said very seriously. "Okay." Lu Chuan agreed. Instead of refusing, he pointed to the bow behind the door and said, "Next, it's yours." Su Ruan froze in place for an instant. It seemed as if he couldn't believe his ears. A moment later, screaming instantly, Boss! Are you telling the truth?" If it were in the past, she would never take it seriously even if it was a fine bow, but now is different from the past. Moreover, she had seen the bows made by Lu Chuan, and they were definitely no worse than those fine bows in the army. Chapter 15. A wild boar. A badger. Enough for him to pay for the annual food. Next he needs to distract himself and do something else. Repair their house. Then deal with Ju Tong. If you really want to get rid of Ju Tong, you must do it without anyone noticing and make him disappear silently. Moreover, you cannot involve yourself in it. Through chatting with Sun Ji, Lu Chuan could feel that Ju Zhen was a very smart person. If Ju Tong encounters any trouble, Ju Zhen might begin to doubt himself. But in this day and age, there is no need for evidence at all, just suspicion. Doubt is enough to make Ju Zhen do many things. It is also enough to make a person fall into an endless abyss. Therefore, killing Ju Tong was only the last resort. Moreover, even if one wanted to kill Ju Tong, one had to find a way to get rid of Ju Zhen as well. After the pig blood coagulates, Lu Chuan scraped off all the fat on the pork. Then start boiling lard. Nowadays, it is really not easy to make some money. Moreover, in Bingju, once winter comes, apart from the staple food, there are only radishes and cabbages left. It is really not easy to eat other vegetables. Naturally, there is not that much oil and water. When boiling lard, Lu Chuan also carefully got a wooden basin. Brushed it inside and out. This was originally what he used to wash his face, but he had nothing else at home. Just use this instead. It seems that there are still many things that need to be added to their home. No brains, unhappy. Come here. At this time, 2 blue wolf cubs came running over. Lu Chuan threw 2 bones with the meat shaved off at his feet. Late at night, Lu Chuan, Bai Siu and Su Ruan had just finished their meal and were about to sit there and chat. But then I heard a loud wolf howl coming from outside the house. The sound of the wolf howl was clear and distant, which made people feel a little creepy. But it sounds a bit far away. A wolf has come down the mountain. Su Ruan immediately became alert. You know, wolves rarely go out alone, unless they are old wolves that have been driven out of the animal world. Moreover, these wolves basically dare not go down the mountain, let alone provoke humans. If you hear a wolf howling at your doorstep, then it is most likely that the wolves are looking for food. Lu Chuan frowned deeply. He looked at Su Ruan beside him, and then picked up the bow. Don't move, I'll go out and check the situation. As he spoke, he opened the door carefully. Then I saw 3 pheasants that had been bitten to death neatly placed at the door. Lu Chuan stood there in a daze, and walked out of the house in surprise. looking into the distance. Even though it was late at night, he could still see clearly some candlelight at the foot of the mountain. On a protruding rock on the mountain, facing the cold wind, stood a majestic wolf. However, the wolf looked a little weak, with a wooden stick tied to its leg. Several wolves that looked strong had gathered around it. See this scene. Lu Chuan was a little surprised. This green wolf seems to be planning something. This blue wolf has a high IQ. Why didn't he do it before? Maybe because he was worried about his child. Or because his body was too weak. Now, it has no scruples anymore? Lu Chuan was guessing in his heart. When the wolf saw Lu Chuan's door open, it turned around and went into the forest, looking extremely cool and unrestrained. The wolves around also disappeared in an instant. Boss? How's it going? At this time, Su Wan came out with some concern and asked. Lu Chuan smiled, and then took a look at the 3 dead pheasants on the ground. It seems that the brainless and unhappy father knows how to be grateful and actually sent 3 pheasants over. We can eat meat more often these days. Lu Chuan spoke. Su Wan nodded, looked at the 3 pheasants in surprise, and asked curiously, people say that wolves will repay kindness. Now it seems that it is true. Lu Chuan smiled helplessly. Maybe it's afraid that I'll starve its cubs. As he spoke, he brought back the 3 pheasants. He grabbed the brainless man, held him on his lap and started to roughnap him. No Brain seemed to be a little distressed and wanted to resist, but he had no strength to do so. In the end, he could only fall asleep in Lu Chuan's arms. It's still early. None of the 3 felt sleepy. Su Wan just talked about her and Bai Siyu's identities. The 2 have known each other since childhood. Bai Siyu's father was the prefect of Shahar County in the former Bingju. In the entire Bingju, they are already considered to be among the top people. Originally, Bai Siyu could have followed his father and lived a glorious life. Unfortunately, after the death of the king of Bingju, the eldest prince supported by Bai Siyu's family did not succeed to the throne. On the contrary, the second prince, who had been keeping a low profile, won the championship at the critical moment. And then, it's a bloody cleansing. The situation at Su Wan's home was similar to what Bai Siyu encountered. They all stand on the side of the eldest prince. This is also normal. After all, the eldest prince is the eldest son, and the second prince does not show any talent on weekdays. Any discerning person will not place his hopes on him. However, the second prince actually had his own team in secret. He endured for more than 10 years, and took advantage of the time when everyone was careless to capture the king of Bingju in one fell swoop. And quickly take control of the army. The means are so fierce that it makes people gasp. I see. Lu Chuan came to his senses at this time and suddenly felt a little sad. Even if you are king, a prince, a general, or a minister, so what? Sometimes, what kills you is not because you made a mistake, or because you did something that angered the heavens and the people, but just because of your position. However, this second prince is indeed a ruthless person. Tonight. At this time, Su Wan said, let Xiaobai accompany you. Since we are already yours, we must be in name only. When Bai Siyu heard this, her cheeks suddenly turned red with embarrassment. I lowered my head involuntarily. Lu Chuan was stunned for a moment, then looked up in surprise. After pondering for a moment, he looked at Bai Siyu and asked, are you ready? He doesn't like to play a solo on this kind of thing. When love is deep, one can't help themselves. Shuru Jairan. It is a truly pleasurable experience. Chapter 16. Bai Siyu blushed and said very seriously, marry a chicken, follow the chicken, marry a dog, follow the dog. What's more, if it weren't for the head of the family's rescue, my fate would have been. Having said that, Bai Siyu couldn't help but pause. Then he continued, so, boss, we know you are a good person, but from the moment you saved us, we are yours. As long as you don't abandon us. Then we are yours in life and your ghosts in death. Having said that, Bai Siyu's eyes were filled with determination. Su Wan next to him also nodded very seriously, agreeing with Lu Chuan's words. There was a gleam in Lu Chuan's eyes, and then he nodded slightly, I understand. Next morning. After Lu Chuan got up, Bai Siyu hid in bed with his head covered with a quilt. It's like a quail hiding. Lu Chuan went to the kitchen, cooked some porridge, and then made some side dishes. They are all common home-cooked dishes. However, the pheasant must be eaten quickly. Any leftovers must be skinned, rinsed, and frozen. The weather is cold. It's actually very easy to get a refrigerator. Just find a few pieces of ice, put them together, and then secure them with wooden boards. This is not difficult. Besides, if you leave it outside, no one will steal it. However, for Lu Chuan now, the most important thing is to sell the things first. He cut half a piece of wild boar meat, then carried the killed badger and walked towards the county town. In the room, however, there was a warm and charming atmosphere gradually echoing inside. Bai Siyu waited until Lu Chuan left before carefully poking his little head out from under the quilt. Her cheeks were rosy, just like a ripe red apple. What does it feel like? At this time, a curious head popped in from outside Lu Chuan's door and said hurriedly, "Quick, what does it feel like?" "It's really strange, my period comes at a really bad time. But it just so happens that we can stagger our paths. Otherwise, I'm afraid the boss really won't be able to bear it." Su Ruan spoke. Bai Siyu glared at Su Ruan with some embarrassment and annoyance. "What are you talking about? Is it okay to say such a thing? What's the big deal? Now, you and I, two sisters, are married to the same person. What can't we say to each other in private?" Su Ruan said carelessly, "You haven't answered me yet." Sharp. Hiss, "So, our boss is considered to be quite powerful?" Su Ruan said with some curiosity. Su Ruan chuckled, and then continued, "How do you feel? How do you feel?" "I have no idea." At this time, Bai Siyu picked up the pillow and hit Su Ruan hard, and then continued, "After your period is gone, you can experience it yourself, right?" "That's right." Su Ruan nodded and spoke as if it was a matter of fact. Lu Chuan walked towards the county town and stopped on the way. He could feel that there were several people following him. Chapter 17. It seems to be malicious. He first put the things in his hands on the ground, then squatted down and adjusted his shoes. Take advantage of this opportunity to look behind. But they discovered that Sun Lazy and his gang had followed them all the way from the village to here. "Brother Sun, this kid was able to hunt such a big wild boar. We may not be his match, right?" A skinny guy at the side said somewhat embarrassedly. Sun Lazy slapped him hard on the head. "Are you stupid? He was just lucky. Besides, he had a bow and arrow in his hand. Now, he was going to the market to sell meat. We robbed him on the way without anyone noticing." Sun Lazy rubbed his hands excitedly, with a hint of cruelty in his eyes. "Follow my instructions later. Wang Marzi, you take the sack, rush up to him and trap him while he's not covered. Then, the rest of you, grab the sticks and start beating him. Beat him half to death. Then we take the pork and run." In the village, we didn't dare to do this because it would easily anger everyone. Now that he left the village on his own, we can't be blamed. As he spoke, Sun Lazy's eyes lit up. "Okay, I'll listen to you, brother Sun." After Lu Chuan saw that it was Sun Lazy, he suddenly felt as uncomfortable as if he had eaten fly shit. Sun Lazy was a well-known rogue in the village, so naturally there were some people gathered around him. In the village, although he was a bit of a rogue, he didn't dare to go too far. Otherwise, Sun Ji would definitely not be willing to let him stay any longer. He might even be sent to the authorities. I didn't expect that he would come up with his plan again. It seems that the villagers should have already known that I had hunted a wild boar. I'm afraid that many people will come to the door, and I don't know whether Bai Siyu and Su Ruan will be able to handle it well. There is still half a pig at home, and as long as the price is right, it can be sold. However, life is not easy for the people in the village. It is already very difficult to pay for the food expenses of the previous year, let alone buy some meat. Just at this moment, Lu Chuan felt someone approaching him quietly from behind. Bang! Lu Chuan dodged and punched the man directly in the face. Woo, woo! After the man whimpered twice, he felt stars in front of his eyes and then fell to the ground in a daze. Sun Lazy roared, "How dare you hit my brother? Brothers, come on, beat him to death." While talking, a group of people rushed towards Lu Chuan with wooden sticks as thick as carrying poles in their hands. Lu Chuan narrowed his eyes. He put down the half-mountain pork and badger and pulled out the carrion pole. Immediately afterwards, a stick was stuffed into Sun Lazy's mouth. Bang! Accompanied by a crisp sound. There was a sudden sound of Sun Lazy's jaw dislocating. And the carrion pole was poured directly into Sun Lazy's mouth. Sun Lazy suddenly felt that his mouth no longer belonged to him. An incredibly hard carrying pole was forced into it, making him extremely uncomfortable. Chapter 18. Sun Lazy wanted to retreat. However, Lu Chuan took a step forward. These idiots. He originally wanted to cover himself with a sack, but now that he saw that the truth was revealed, the first thing he thought of was not to escape, but to rush forward directly. Lu Chuan didn't hesitate at all. The stick in his hand danced. Suddenly pick it up. He knocked Sun Lazy to the ground. Then, he looked at the people around him calmly. Do you still want to go up? Lu Chuan. At this time, Sun Lazy was sobbing, covering his chin with both hands, and his mouth was full of blood. There is hatred in his eyes. You dare to hit me. Sun Lazy stood up unsteadily. Do you believe that I can make sure you can never go back to Shuangshui village? I don't believe it. Lu Chuan stared at Sun Lazy in front of him, then squatted down. He laughed playfully, but I have 100 ways to kill you, and no one will know. Do you believe it? I told you, don't mess with me. Today, I'm just teaching you a lesson. As he spoke, Lu Chuan reached out and grabbed Sun Lazy's arm. He picked up a dead branch from the side and broke the report into 2 pieces with one hand. Par. He inserted it fiercely into the palm of Sun Lazy's hand. Be good, go find a doctor and have him take a good look at you, otherwise, your hand will be really useless. It's not too late to go now. Sun Lazy fell there howling in pain. How can you be so cruel? Sun Lazy's eyes were filled with deep fear and resentment. I never said I was a good person, did I? Lu Chuan patted Sun Lazy's head and said, you should be thankful that you met me now. Otherwise, even if you had 10 lives, they would not be enough for me to kill. After saying that, Lu Chuan turned and left. Sun Lazy climbed up from the ground. He grimaced in intense pain. What are you all standing there for? Take me to see a doctor. Lu Chuan walked all the way to Shu's mansion. When I saw Shu Hoxiang again, Shu Hoxiang's eyes were filled with surprise. You got something so quickly. It seems that you are being modest. This is not luck at all, it's clearly your extraordinary strength. What luck? It's true that I hunted the badger, but this wild boar was just a coincidence. At this point, Lu Chuan smiled and said, look. Wild boar meat. There's one weighing about 100 pounds here. Shu Hoxiang paused for a moment, then continued, I'll give you 150 coins per pound. In other words, I can give you 15,000 coins. This really made Lu Chuan feel excited. Is wild boar meat so expensive? It's almost the end of the year, and my family really needs it. It's really hard to buy it outside, so I'll give it to you at the highest price on the market, but don't worry, I'll give you 3,000 yuan back. Without waiting for Shu Hoxiang to speak, Lu Chuan spoke hurriedly. Shu Hoxiang narrowed his eyes. This kid is so smart. Okay, then I'll give you 6,000 coins for the badger meat. And you don't have to come back. Chapter 19. Shu Hoxiang was in a very good mood at this moment. Although he was greedy, he knew in his heart that he had to have a good relationship with the boy in front of him no matter what. Having been a steward for so long, he naturally knew that only when everyone became rich would everyone make a profit. If I am too greedy, this guy will take the meat to find someone else, and my source of income will be cut off. Thank you very much, Butler Shu. Lu Chuan bowed with a smile on his face. Now, Lu Chuan is really not short of money. Half a wild boar was sold for 12,000 coins directly, plus the 6,000 coins from the badger. A total of 18,000 coins could be obtained. Next, we need to replace it with food. Moreover, the loom can also be arranged. This is what Bai Siyu has been thinking about. Bai Siyu is actually a somewhat conflicted and proud woman. She clearly understood that her contribution to the family was not enough, so she was very eager to prove herself. So, Lu Chuan went out hunting. She would embroider at home. However, embroidery is a more delicate job. Moreover, it takes a long time. Although she can do it, she is not very skilled. So it is not easy to sell it at a high price. The rich can't appreciate it, and the poor can't afford it. Therefore, only weaving is the most suitable for her, and it is linen. This kind of cloth is affordable for ordinary farmers and can also be used to supplement their household expenses. Ordinary farmers can still afford a loom, but the price is not cheap, about 3,000 coins. That's right. At this time, Shu Hoxiang seemed to have thought of something. You asked me about Chen Liang before. Does your family have to pay the annual food tax? So you want to make do with the old grain? Xu Hoxiang asked. Lu Chuan nodded. Xu Hoxiang glanced around and then continued, now, old grain is really hard to buy. I do have a way to get it, but the price is not much cheaper. On the market, the price of new grain mixed with old grain is 50 coins. My way. I can give you 40 coins per pound. This is already the limit. Xu Hoxiang lowered his voice and continued, how many people are there in your family? 3 mouthfuls. Xu Hoxiang was stunned for a moment, then asked in surprise, why are there 3 people? Some time ago, their higher-ups arranged wives for each man's family. Is there anyone else upstairs at home? Xu Hoxiang asked again. Without. Lu Chuan smiled bitterly and shook his head, I offended the messenger who sent my wife, so I was forced to choose 2. Moreover, they have already been registered. I really have no other choice, so I started to go hunting in the mountains. Who knows, what a lucky break. We can actually gather enough food before paying the annual grain tax. Of course, this is all thanks to Butler Xu. If it weren't for Butler Xu, I'm afraid I would really have nowhere to turn to. Lu Chuan lifted the flowery sedan chair. Xu Hoxiang nodded and said, then you better be careful. These messengers are in charge of different areas. Since he is here to send off their wife, he will also be the one to collect the annual food. Maybe it will embarrass you then. Even after paying the annual food allowance, I won't let you live in peace. As he spoke, Xu Hoxiang smiled bitterly and said, anyway, you'll just have to wish for the best. You, follow this and go east. After crossing Dingshui River, you will see a store called Kui Ji Grain Shop. Go in and find a man named Kui Bai Wei. He has old grain. Just say that it was the steward of the Shu mansion who introduced him, and he will know. Xu Hoxiang said, you'd better prepare more. Who knows, the messenger will make things difficult for you again. Chapter 20. Kui's Grain Shop. Lu Chuan stood there in a daze. How? Xu Hoxiang realized something and laughed, have you asked before? Right. Lu Chuan nodded. Say my name this time. While Xu Hoxiang was speaking, he had already prepared the money and handed it to Lu Chuan. After giving a few brief instructions, he returned to Xu's residence. It seems that this Kui Ji grain store has some relationship with Xu Hoxiang, otherwise Xu Hoxiang would not take it so seriously. I know I have to pay the annual food tax. That's why I gave myself this way. I'm afraid I can get a lot of kickbacks from it. I have to say, being a housekeeper is really good. It's just a pity. No matter whether they are housekeepers or servants, in the final analysis, they all belong to the lowly class. They were all bought by someone, and if you were a slave in a certain family, you had to change your name. If their host is capable, he will naturally receive more attention. People outside may look up to you, but not many people will look up to people of lowly origin in their hearts. However, most of them don't care about other people's eyes. For them, being able to make money and help their family members is the most important thing. As long as it's not too excessive or gets discovered. Basically, the host family just turns a blind eye. After receiving the news, Lu Chuan headed east. Just arrived at the Dingshui River. But I saw a place surrounded by people. Lu Chuan walked over. I found a ferocious-looking man standing there. In front of him, there were a few people standing scattered around. These people looked pale and thin, as if they had not eaten for a long time. Moreover, there is a straw tag stuck on the top of this person's head. This also means that these people are of low status. It means that life is thinner than paper. This man is selling these people here. Let's go for a walk and have a look. For just 10,000 yuan, you can take one home. Moreover, these people are of low status and do not count towards the registered population. In other words, even if you take them back, you do not need to pay the annual food tax. The man looked around and said cheerfully, take it home and play with it however you want. It doesn't matter even if I kill you. Lu Chuan stood there. Looking at everything in front of him, there was a bit of helplessness in his eyes. In this day and age, these things are so normal that he is no longer surprised. Logically speaking. Scholars, farmers, merchants and artisans. He is a farmer, so logically speaking, his status is not low. However, this is only theoretical. In fact, farmers who rely on the weather for their livelihood are the favorites of rulers of all dynasties. They are just like workhorses, eating little and working a lot, and most of them don't have any bad intentions. The status is only high in name only. To be honest, ordinary merchants have many ways to make farmers suffer in silence. Lu Chuan was about to leave. But he was stopped by someone. My friend, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Since you are already here, why not take a good look around, just in case there is something you like? The one who stopped Lu Chuan was the ferocious-looking broker who said happily. He's been here for a while. There were quite a few people looking at it, but no one was willing to buy it. After all, these people are pale and thin. What will happen even if you buy them back? They also need to be looked after, and these people of low status are different from those with registered permanent residence. If they are unwilling to stay in one place, they will run away. Especially for those who come from the dental industry, the probability of running away is too high. Lu Chuan is not a saint, so he is too lazy to spend his own money to rescue these people. Look at me, I don't look like someone who can afford 10,000 yuan. Lu Chuan shook his head helplessly. Chapter 21. About to leave. But suddenly I realized something was wrong. He saw a person. This person's appearance is somewhat similar to Chen Qingqing. However, there is only some similarity between their eyebrows, but this person is obviously much more beautiful than Chen Qingqing. However, there was no light in that person's eyes. Just at this moment, a line of information suddenly appeared above her head. Name, Chen Miao. Age, 16. Appearance, 94. Favorability, 0. Currently available shelter, none. Hiss. This was the first time Lu Chuan encountered someone with a favorability level of 0. In other words, there is no benefit at all in taking the other person in. However, as your favorability level increases in the later stages, you can also get rewards. At this time, Lu Chuan felt a little conflicted. Do you want to take me in? If we take him in, the money we have to pay is really too little. It just so happens that I haven't opened today. If you really want it, I'll give you a 50% discount. You can take it for 5,000. The man from that country saw Lu Chuan and started talking to him. He spoke hurriedly. In fact, people like them are not afraid of meeting someone who is not interested, but are afraid of meeting someone who doesn't talk to them. As long as you open your mouth, they will have a reason to continue. Even if you don't buy it, you can take the opportunity to say something else to interest the people around you. 5,000 yuan. Lu Chuan's brows furrowed deeply. Glancing around at the others, it was discovered that there was no panel information for other people, which meant that only Chen Miao was worthy of the system's attention. This one. The broker looked at Lu Chuan. He immediately became interested and said hastily, "This is Jie. Even though she doesn't look pretty now, she has a good foundation. I tell you, there are many people who want this kind of woman. Can you cook?" Lu Chuan ignored the broker's words. Asked. Chen Miao looked up in surprise. After a pause, he nodded slightly. After Lu Chuan pondered for a moment, he continued, "Okay, then come with me." Just at this moment, Chen Miao's panel jumped again. Name, Chen Miao. Age, 16. Appearance, 94. Favorability, 10. Currently available shelter, none. Depend on. At that moment, Lu Chuan almost cursed. Are you kidding me? I took you in with such good intentions, yet you actually reduced my favorability towards me. If it weren't for the fact that you have a panel, I wouldn't care about you no matter how good looking you are. One hand pays, the other hand delivers the goods. The broker excitedly took out a red rope and tied Chen Miao up very skillfully. Once sold, no refunds or exchanges. If he runs away, it has nothing to do with us. So, it's best to lock her up after you get home. The broker instructed Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan nodded and glanced at Chen Miao. Let's go. Chen Miao's eyes were full of resistance. Chapter 22. The broker and Lu Chuan signed a sales contract. Human trafficking is illegal. However, the exception is the lowly class. Moreover, being a lowly person is not cheap at all. The cheap ones are only those who can't lift with their hands or carry with their shoulders. Those who are really capable or strong can be sold at a high price even if they are classified as slaves. Ordinary people simply can't afford it. Even if I can buy it, I don't want to spend the money. After signing the contract, Lu Chuan took Chen Miao into Qi's grain shop. The shopkeeper came out, and when he saw Lu Chuan, he was also stunned. "Why are you here again?" "I'm looking for Kui Bai Wei." Lu Chuan noticed that there was nothing unusual around him, and said, "It was the Shu family's housekeeper Shu who asked me to come." "Oh." The shopkeeper was stunned for a moment. There was a trace of struggle on his face. After a pause, he said to Lu Chuan, "Let's talk inside." As he spoke, he shouted to the back, "Second kid! Come out and watch. Here I come." A little boy who looked about 15 or 16 years old walked out from the backyard. The shopkeeper took Lu Chuan and Chen Miao to the inner room. "How much?" The shopkeeper's voice was low. £400. Lu Chuan smiled and stretched out for fingers. The shopkeeper was stunned for a moment, frowning. "Not much, but the price may be higher than you think. 45 cents a pound. For 400 kilograms, it would cost about 18,000 coins, or 18 taels of silver." The shopkeeper said very seriously. "Oh." Lu Chuan stood there in a daze, his brows slightly frowned. "Butler told me it was 40 coins. 40 cents, that was the price 3 days ago." The shopkeeper gave a bitter smile and said, "It's also my fault for not informing Butler Shu." Lu Chuan stood there in a daze, staring at Kui Bai Wei in front of him. Realized that Kui Bai Wei was not lying to him. The price should have increased 3 days ago. I wanted to curse in my heart at that moment. The price of food really changes every day. Why the price increase? Kui Bai Wei sighed, "Since you were introduced by Butler Shu, you are not an outsider. It's okay to tell you that 3 days ago, the Bingju army began to buy up old grain in large quantities throughout Bingju. So, nowadays, there is really not much old grain on the market, and most of it has to be mixed with new grain to be sold. Some even sell it as new food. I am a relatively honest businessman. 45 cents, absolutely fair to everyone." Kui Bai Wei spoke. "Become?" Lu Chuan paused for a moment, then continued, "However, I don't have enough money with me today. I want 200 kilograms first. In addition, I can give you a deposit for another 200 kilograms. I will come over to get the remaining 200 kilograms in 3 days. What do you think?" Kui Bai Wei nodded. "Okay, if that's the case, just give me 10 taels of silver." Kui Bai Wei thought about it in his mind, and then continued. Lu Chuan smiled bitterly. To be honest, he was a little unwilling. However, this is how things are these days. Heaven does not want people to die, and the world does not want people to live. Lu Chuan suddenly understood why the original owner died so peacefully. Even if he could survive, he would most likely not be able to hold on when the annual food payment was due. After paying the money. Chapter 23. Lu Chuan carried 200 kilograms of food and started walking towards the village. Chen Miao followed behind Lu Chuan, with a strange light flashing in her eyes. Along the way, I kept looking around. Lu Chuan feels even worse. His current physical condition is not strong enough for him to carry such heavy food, 200 kilograms, and walk such a long distance. In front of Chen Miao, he couldn't throw the food into his personal space. "That's enough. Stop looking so sullen. You look constipated." Lu Chuan glanced at Chen Miao unhappily, threw their burden there, sat there, and said breathlessly, "That's all." Chen Miao looked at Lu Chuan sarcastically. Lu Chuan ignored Chen Miao. He discovered that Chen Miao was the kind of woman who would not move if led, and would even retreat if beaten. I didn't provoke her. In other words, it was I who saved her. Not only did she not show the slightest bit of gratitude, she was even so hostile towards me. If I had known this earlier, I would have bought a loom for Xiaobai at home. Yes. Lu Chuan narrowed his eyes and looked at Chen Miao. I was a little confused for the moment. I bought you, so naturally you have to do all the dirty work. While talking, Lu Chuan said to Chen Miao, "Carry it and follow me." Chen Miao's eyes widened, as if she couldn't believe what she heard. Pointed at himself. "I? Yes, that's right, it's you." Lu Chuan tilted his head and said, "I didn't buy you just to make you a young mistress, did I?" The corner of Chen Miao's mouth twitched violently. I have never seen such a shameless man before. At this moment, Chen Miao's favorability towards Lu Chuan dropped again. "How can I help you if you tie me up?" Chen Miao frowned and stretched her hands forward while speaking. Lu Chuan didn't detain her either. He was not really afraid that Chen Miao would run away. Firstly, the only way to get here is to go into the city or to Shuangshui village. Or go to the wild mountains. In today's weather, it is not easy to survive in the mountains and wilderness. Chen Miao Miao glared at Lu Chuan fiercely. Then he walked to the load and picked it up shakily. Yo ho! Sure. Lu Chuan's eyes lit up. I didn't expect that Chen Miao Miao, who looks thin and weak, could actually carry a load of 200 kilograms. This is definitely not easy. Although she was staggering, Chen Miao Miao still gritted her teeth and persevered. Lu Chuan was naturally happy to see this. TSK, there is nothing more pleasing to the eye than watching a beautiful woman suffer. Lu Chuan thought happily. At the same time, he began to doubt the identities of Widow Wang and Chen Qingqing. In Lu Chuan's memory, Widow Wang and Chen Qingqing came to Shuangshui village 10 years ago. At that time, the two of them fled from famine. However, strangely enough, those who fled from famine had travel permits. Sun Ji also found that there was nothing wrong with the pass, so he took them in the village. Later, everyone gradually forgot about this matter. Originally, Lu Chuan also felt that there was nothing to doubt about the identities of Widow Wang and Chen Qingqing. However, when he saw Chen Miao Miao, he realized that something was wrong. It couldn't be that he lost his daughter on the way to escape famine, right? Moreover, even if it was lost, it would be impossible for Widow Wang to not say a word after so many years. Either the similarity between Chen Qingqing and Chen Miao Miao in appearance, name, age and looks is just a coincidence, or there is some secret hidden in these two people. Chapter 24. Along the way, Lu Chuan was not idle either. Instead, they took down some relatively solid icicles from some more dangerous places. Although Chen Miao Miao didn't understand what Lu Chuan was going to do. But I didn't ask any more questions. All their way back home, Su Ruan and Bai Siyu looked at Chen Qingqing, who was carrying the load, in some surprise. This is. Bai Siyu frowned slightly and asked. On the way, I saw someone selling grass tags. I thought that if I went hunting in the mountains, there would be no one at home to cook. So I bought it. Here are 200 kilograms of food. I'll buy another 200 kilograms when we get into the city in 2 days. Lu Chuan spoke. After hearing this, Bai Siyu and Su Ruan looked at each other. Didn't say much. Strictly speaking, the two of them can be regarded as Lu Chuan's concubines, but Chen Miao Miao can only be regarded as Lu Chuan's slave. Although it is stipulated above that ordinary farmers are not allowed to take concubines. However, it is not that strict. The main reason is that the government also knows that these wives are assigned as part of the mission, so there are not many restrictions in this regard. Sister, what's your name? At this time, Bai Siyu walked up first and spoke. After meeting Bai Siyu and Su Ruan, Chen Qingqing became even more certain that Lu Chuan was definitely a sex-hungry ghost. Otherwise, how could such a deserted courtyard and such a dilapidated house be home to two stunning beauties? My name is Ji. Chen Miao Miao spoke up. Lu Chuan didn't correct it either. As he put the grain into the rice jar, he said, nothing happened at home today, right? Sun Lazy went to intercept him on the road. Apart from a few ants wanting to buy meat, there shouldn't be anything else going on. Speaking of which, there is indeed a strange thing. At this time, Bai Siyu helped Lu Chuan tidy up his clothes and said, today, about 10 officials came to the village. These officers go door to door. It's not about collecting grain or taxes. It's about finding out what happened 11 years ago. We were 2 people, and we had just arrived here not long ago, so we didn't know, and they left too. Bai Siyu said with some doubt. What happened 11 years ago? Hearing this, Lu Chuan looked surprised and asked, what happened 11 years ago? 11 years ago, there was a man who brought 2 little girls to the village. Bai Siyu spoke. Hear this. Chen Miao Miao's pupils suddenly shrank, as if she thought of something, and her face turned pale in an instant. His lips opened slightly, but he said nothing. A man with 2 little girls. Lu Chuan smiled and didn't take it too seriously for the moment. In his impression, there was no such person. But the fact that the police were looking for someone so blatantly, and the person they were looking for was someone from 11 years ago, was in itself a bit wrong. Combine it with the information you got before. Lu Chuan was a little confused. This Zhu Zhang has been serving as the county magistrate. Is it because he wants to find someone? And you want to search for it without anyone noticing? But what is there about these 3 people that is worth him spending so much effort to find? Okay, forget about that. Chapter 25. Lu Chuan waved his hand. Do you know how to stew pork ribs and cabbage? Go and cook. Chen Miao clenched her fists tightly and glared at Lu Chuan fiercely. Then he took a deep breath and responded, Where is the kitchen? Outside, turn right. Let me do it. Bai Siu hurriedly took Chen Miao to the kitchen. Walking out of the door, Bai Siu held Chen Miao's hand and whispered, Don't be like this. The head of the family is a good man. He took pity on us and gave us a place to live. I probably bored you because I felt sorry for you. Chen Miao raised her eyes and smiled contemptuously. Who among those standing by the river today is not pitiful? With just one sentence, Bai Siu was speechless. Then I don't know. Anyway, the boss is a good person. After spending a long time together, you will understand. As they were talking, Bai Siu brought Chen Miao to the kitchen. Tell her where everything is. Su Ruan looked at Lu Chuan strangely. Boss, do you like this type? Lu Chuan was a little embarrassed and said, Are you kidding? I sincerely think that you can all do what you want to do. Now that you have a bow, you can go into the mountains to hunt. It's a pity that war horses are not available for purchase nowadays. Otherwise, you could teach me horseback archery. Lu Chuan spoke. This should be a very useful skill in this day and age. Su Ruan nodded. As for Xiaobai, she was originally a lady from a noble family. But she was suddenly afflicted and ended up in this situation. Since she likes embroidery, you can develop in this direction in the future. It's just that life at home is still difficult right now. Maybe I can buy some brocade in the future. Please hire some embroiderers and let her walk along this road. Lu Chuan spoke. Su Ruan was immediately moved beyond words. That's right. Moved, Su said, there is one more thing that needs the master's advice. Looking at Su Ruan's serious expression, Lu Chuan asked in confusion, What's wrong? Didn't you bring back 3 little wild boars? We can keep it in the house for now, but as the wild boar grows bigger, we will definitely need to keep it in a pen. Su Ruan spoke. There's an open space behind the house. My idea is, if we're not busy these 2 days, we can build a pigsty. This is indeed a serious matter. And Su Ruan spoke again, if there is a chance in the future, we can find some pheasant eggs, or find some pheasant chicks, and raise them at home. At least we can have some good sources of eggs. Also, if you want to raise chickens, you need to build a chicken coop. Su Ruan counted on her fingers and listed them very seriously. Where did you hear all this? Lu Chuan stood there in a daze, although he thought that one should look at others with new eyes after 3 days of absence. But, I have only been away for less than a day, right? This Su Ruan actually understood so many things. Could it be that this little girl has been pretending to be a pig and eating the tiger all along? Today, I walked around the village and talked to many aunts. I wrote down what we should do and what we can do now. There shouldn't be anything missing. Su Ruan said very seriously, since we sisters have taken after you, then you are also part of the family. Going into the mountains to hunt is dangerous after all. Su Ruan stared at Lu Chuan sincerely. If life at home was better, the head of the family wouldn't have to take such a big risk to go into the mountains. Chapter 26. Su Ruan was a little worried. There are also some fears. Since yesterday, when Lu Chuan dragged back a wild boar, Su Ruan realized that this mountain was definitely not full of treasures as she had imagined. It also comes with many dangers. Wild boars are the most dangerous. There are also blind bears, tigers, and even leopards. Each one is fraught with danger. Today, in addition to going out to find out what I could do, I also inquired about the situation in the mountains. Many hunters died in the mountains. Moreover, there are various ways to die. There were even some people whose bodies could not be found because they were eaten by wild beasts. When Su Ruan heard this, she was frightened. So I was more attentive, not only to inquire, but also to look, explore, and even constantly think about how to get more things at home so that I don't need to go hunting in the mountains every day. Even when hunting, try to avoid dangerous places as much as possible. Lu Chuan smiled. Rest assured. Looking at Su Ruan's eyes, Lu Chuan knew what she was thinking. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel a little moved. Although Su Ruan and Bai Siu were both from famous families, they didn't have the slightest bit of arrogance. Maybe it's because he received good family education since childhood. It is also possible that he was frightened by the defeat of his family. I would rather be an ordinary person honestly. However, no matter which one it is, Lu Chuan has made a profit. I have to say, Chen Miemia's cooking skills are pretty good. Nowadays, there aren't so many spices or condiments, but Chen Miemia can make even the ordinary pork ribs stewed with cabbage look exceptionally delicious. After cooking, when it was brought to the table, Chen Miemia stood obediently by the side. There was no brilliance in his eyes. Just like a robot. Lu Chuan looked at Chen Miemia in surprise. What are you doing? Are you here to eat? Are you going to be treated? Chen Miemia at this moment. Only then did he realize what was happening and looked up. He looked at Lu Chuan somewhat bewilderedly. Bai Siyu saw Chen Miemia's embarrassment and hurriedly pulled her to sit down. Sit down, there aren't so many rules at home. It will be more lively if we eat together. Chen Miemia seemed a little uncomfortable. She sat there awkwardly with her bowl and chopsticks in her hands. For a moment, she had mixed feelings and didn't know what to say. Bai Siyu raised his head at this time. Master, we don't have that many rooms at home, and we don't have that many beds and beddings. What do you think of Ji? Lu Chuan raised his head and thought about it seriously. There are only 2 rooms in the house now. Bai Siyu and I have made substantial progress, but Su Wan has not. How about letting her sleep in your room for now? Lu Chuan looked at Su Wan and said with a smile, we can also take care of each other. Tomorrow, I will build a simple brick kiln and burn some bricks. Whether it is building a house or doing other things, bricks will be needed. Good. Su Wan nodded. I also understood what Lu Chuan meant. He was probably worried that Chen Miemia would run away. After dinner, Lu Chuan started making his second bow. The first bow was a bit simple. Although its accuracy and range were good, Lu Chuan still had some trouble getting used to it. Chapter 27. It takes a lot of effort to make a good bow. I made one temporarily because I was in a hurry to go into the mountains to hunt. Since this sword was given to Su Wan, he needed to make a new one for himself. However, this night, Lu Chuan was twisting the rope. But this time he used ropes instead of straw. There are some skills in twisting the rope. Generally, the bowstring should not be too thick, let alone too heavy. Be light and flexible. It must also be strong enough. Fortunately, this is not a difficult task for Lu Chuan. Su Wan was standing aside, watching Lu Chuan's actions with a hint of shock in her eyes. Where did you learn this skill? I'm afraid none of the craftsmen in the army have your skills. Su Wan said, it's a pity for you to be a hunter. If you can join the army, you will definitely shine. Forget it. Lu Chuan smiled and said, I'm not interested in fighting and killing. Are you kidding? I was a mercenary in my previous life and all I want in this life is a wife, kids and a warm bed. Since you have traveled through time, you should try to enjoy life. Finally, after soaking the rope in tung oil, Lu Chuan and Bai Siyu climbed onto the bed. The next day, Lu Chuan woke up. First, I practiced boxing in the yard. This has become his daily routine. Afterwards, I went to the river and collected some river sand and yellow mud. After all the work is ready. But I saw a figure running up the mountain breathlessly. Brother Chuan, something happened, something serious happened. There was some anxiety in that voice. The man's name was Li Yanjun, he was the same age as Lu Chuan, and they got along well together. Li Yanjun's family is a butcher, so he has some money. Li Yanjun was sent to a private school for a few years. However, Li Yanjun was not a good student and he made the teacher so angry that he never went there again. A few days ago, when I was choosing a wife, this guy picked a big and strong guy. After returning, we went straight to the bridal chamber. It seems that he has tasted the sweetness, so he hasn't come to see Lu Chuan in the past few days. Don't be in a hurry, take your time. Lu Chuan looked at Li Yanjun, who was panting. What happened? Li Yanjun said, Village chief, the village chief was beaten by people from the neighboring Zhaojie village. Now, the people from Zhaojie village are coming to find you aggressively. You should find a place to hide quickly. Zhaojie village. What do you want me for? Lu Chuan felt something strange. Li Yanjun said, I'm far away, so I can only hear a rough idea. Did you go hunting in someone else's hunting ground, and did you kill a wild boar? Their hunters in Zhaojie village said they have been following that wild boar for many days. Who knew you would get there first? Of course they don't want to, but now they've come knocking on our door. Lu Chuan heard this. He burst into laughter immediately. Hey, this is really rare. When did this mountain become the hunting ground of Zhaojiar village? Do we need the Zhaojiar village's approval before we can go into the mountain to hunt in the future? Lu Chuan raised the corner of his mouth and snorted coldly. Hey, now's not the time to talk about this. Li Yanjun said hurriedly, you know, our village is depopulated, there are not many men left, let alone hunters. No one has gone up the mountain to hunt for many years. And the Zhaojiar village formed a hunting team and roamed in the mountains all day long. Now that you have hunted their wild boar, of course they are not happy about it. Chapter 28. Damn this wild boar. Lu Chuan cursed in his heart. Damn it, are you bullying me? There was a hint of anger in Lu Chuan's eyes, and then he continued, did they also beat up the village chief? Li Yanjun nodded somewhat awkwardly. They came too fast, and they are all big hunters. Speaking of this, Li Yanjun still felt a little aggrieved. Then he seemed to think of something, Brother Chuan, why don't you find a place to hide? Hide? Lu Chuan laughed sarcastically. Shake your head slightly. Are you kidding me? The people from Zhaojiar village are here to bully me, where can I hide? At this moment, Lu Chuan saw that the people from Zhaojiar village were heading towards Lu Chuan's home in a menacing manner. Everyone held a weapon in his hands. There was a fierce look in his eyes. It was as if he wanted to skin Lu Chuan alive. Poor mountains and bad waters produce evil people. Nowadays, people have died just for a bite of food, not to mention so many wild boars. When they looked at Lu Chuan, there was greed that was hard to conceal in each of their eyes. Lu Chuan. At this time, Zhao Debao stood up, looked at Lu Chuan, and shouted, you went to hunt in our hunting grounds without the permission of our Zhaojiar village. And they intercepted the wild boar we've been tracking for a long time. Zhao Debao's eyes were fierce. Tell me, what should we do about this matter? What to do? Lu Chuan raised his head, looked at Zhao Debao in front of him, shook his head slightly and said, who stipulated that this mountain is the hunting ground of your Zhaojiar village? In the past, there were no hunters in our Shuangshui village. So we are too lazy to bother with you. If you like to go hunting in the mountains, then go hunting in the mountains. We never said anything. Now, the entire forest has become the hunting ground of your Zhaojiar village. I would like to ask. At this point, Lu Chuan showed a hint of sarcasm at the corner of his mouth. You keep saying that this is your Zhaojiar village's hunting ground, then if you call it, will it respond? Zhao Debao's face turned red with anger. Looking at Lu Chuan, white steam came out of his nostrils. Stop making trouble here. I'm telling you, you must give us an explanation for what happened today. Otherwise, the hunters in Zhaojiar village will never let it go. While talking, there was a hint of ferocity in Zhao Debao's eyes. When the time comes, don't blame us for being ruthless. Lu Chuan glanced at everyone, with a hint of sarcasm on his face. So domineering. If you have the ability, you can also show us the official approval document. Besides, when you go hunting in the mountains, those who can catch prey should take the spoils. You are not good enough, but you are still jealous of others who have caught prey. Lu Chuan said sarcastically, their hunters in Zhaojiar village are actually a bunch of cowards. You farted. At this time, a young man suddenly stood up behind Zhao Debao. Holding a machete in his hand, he chopped towards Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan dodged. Then, a slap hit the man hard on the body. The man's body swayed, stars appeared in his eyes, and then he fell heavily to the ground. Lu Chuan shook his hand. You come to my door and show off your power? Let's see if you really have that kind of ability. Speaking of this, Lu Chuan spat at the young man lying on the ground. Lu Chuan, you are going too far. Chapter 29. We came here to find you, just to discuss the ownership of the prey with you, but you humiliated us again and again. Do you really think that there is no one in our Zhaojiar village? Anger flickered in Zhao Debao's eyes. However, the tone was a little weaker at this time. From the moves just now, he could feel that the Lu Chuan in front of him was actually a martial artist. And Lu Chuan's eyes are like those of a wild wolf in the mountains. It's daunting. The light flashing in the depths of his eyes was as if he truly regarded life as worthless. Zhao Debao, who often goes into the mountains and often comes into contact with important people, can naturally see the difference in Lu Chuan. At the same time, I was more or less surprised. How did this coward change? Before, Lu Chuan was a well-known coward in the surrounding area. He basically never had conflicts with others. Even when he was bullied, he would usually keep silent. Therefore, Zhao Debao thought that if he came to find Lu Chuan today, he would definitely be able to catch him easily. But he never expected it. Lu Chuan is so tough. Discuss. What the hell? What have you contributed? Are you here to discuss the ownership of the prey with me? Am I your father? Or your mother? Zhao Debao, you have been a hunter for decades. Once you enter the mountains, life and death are determined by fate, and wealth and honor are determined by heaven. Don't say that you have killed prey. Even if you found gold in the mountains, it is your own luck and ability. Lu Chuan's cold gaze made Zhao Debao unable to raise his head. Why? Why are you here today? What do you want to do? If you want to bully others, then you have chosen the wrong person. Lu Chuan snorted coldly. At this moment, Zhao Debao laughed out of anger. Okay. It seems that nephew Lu Chuan is determined to stick to this path until the end. This is a good thing. Brothers, go. Take whatever you like. This is what we deserve. Isn't Lu Chuan very capable? I want to see if his hands can knock us all down. And just at this moment, the curtain was lifted. Su Ruan bent his bow and drew his arrow, then stood there quietly. The arrow is aimed at Zhao Debao. Let's see who dares. Their heroic voice made everyone present tremble, and Su Ruan's red dress looked particularly eye-catching among the snow-covered mountains. Snort. A pussy. Just trying to scare us off. Do you really think we are made of mud? The corner of Zhao Debao's mouth twitched violently. He felt that Su Ruan's eyes were fixed on him, and the arrow was also aimed at him. She only has a bow. And there are 13 of us. Zhao Debao gritted his teeth and said, Don't be scared by him. Zhao Shi. What are you standing there for? Let them see our village's sharpshooter. The villager named Zhao Shi quickly came to his senses at this time. Raise your bow and arrow. But, at that moment, swoosh. A sound that broke through the air was heard. Zhao Shi's bowstring broke at that moment. Chapter 30. There was a hint of smile in Lu Chuan's eyes. Su Ruan's horse riding and archery skills are really amazing. The woman who came out of the general's mansion had an indescribable wildness. Moreover, the arrow was shot with great skill. Zhao Shi realized it later and shouted hurriedly, subconsciously throwing the bow in his hand aside. The shortest time. Su Ruan had drawn out an arrow again, and then bent the bow and drew the arrow again. The whole process is like flowing water. There is not a single moment of stagnation. Uncle Zhao. Lu Chuan looked at Zhao Debao, his eyes narrowed slightly, and then continued, It seems that your people are not that good. Su Ruan. Lu Chuan called out again. Su Ruan nodded and replied, You order, boss. Remember. From now on, anyone who moves from Zhaojie village will be shot. You don't have to shoot in the head, just shoot directly at their feet. There was a hint of sarcasm in Lu Chuan's voice. Clear. Su Ruan nodded again. Lu Chuan yawned, looked at Zhao Debao in front of him, then spread his hands and said, Oh. I'm sorry, I just forgot. I just started hunting in the mountains, so I don't have much experience. I probably don't have that many arrows prepared now. How many do you have left? While talking, Lu Chuan looked at Su Ruan who was standing aside. Su Ruan said calmly, Boss, there are still 7 arrows. But there are 13 of them. At this point, Lu Chuan's eyes showed a hint of worry, and then he looked at Zhao Debao. How about I give you an idea? If you all rush forward, she will definitely not have enough arrows. Besides, we definitely won't be able to react in time. As Lu Chuan spoke, a cruel smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The corner of Zhao Debao's mouth twitched violently. How could he not know this method? However, even if the opponent was too late to shoot 2 people, Lu Chuan could still take care of 2 more. The losses on our side would be too great. I brought everyone here with such rage, and if I just leave like this. Zhao Debao was also quite indignant. He looked at Lu Chuan in front of him with resentment in his eyes. Humph, I didn't expect that nephew you are such a cruel person. There's nothing I can do. Lu Chuan narrowed his eyes, You have to live. These days, good people don't live long. While speaking, Lu Chuan looked at Zhao Debao in front of him, paused for a moment, and then continued, So, whoever wants to be the good guy can be it. If you think I'm easy to bully, that's really the wrong target. There was a sarcastic smile on Lu Chuan's lips. Let's go. Zhao Debao roared angrily, although he was unwilling to do so. However, it is obvious today that no benefits can be gained from Lu Chuan. Even if one does gain any, it will come at a heavy price. But he, Lu Chuan, has to go up the mountain eventually. By then, nothing will be up to him. Thinking of this, a cruel smile flashed in Zhao Dabao's eyes. Bang! R. Zhao Dabao howled miserably and fell to the ground. An arrow pierced directly into the sole of his foot. Su Wan looked at everyone coldly, without any emotion in her eyes. Didn't you understand what the boss said? No one is allowed to move. I'll shoot anyone who moves. Chapter 31. Su Wan's voice came out. But it made everyone feel like they were falling into an ice cellar. Zhao Dabao stared at Lu Chuan fiercely with anger in his eyes. You, what do you want to do? Why don't you take care of your wife? Why should I care about her? She is just strictly following my orders. Not only will I not care, I will also reward her. Lu Chuan looked at Zhao Dabao with a smile. Then squat down. Look at his injured foot. Then he casually pulled the arrow out of his foot. R. A miserable scream was heard. Zhao Dabao's body was shaking constantly. The cold and pain rushed through his body madly at that moment. You, what do you want to do? Zhao Dabao looked at Lu Chuan in front of him. This time, he was really scared. He could feel that Lu Chuan in front of him did not take their lives seriously at all. Even if he killed these people, he would never take it to heart. Nothing. There was still a warm smile on Lu Chuan's face. I just heard that you beat the village chief. The village chief is the face of our village. If you hit him, it means you hit the face of Shuangshui village. We should finally settle this account, right? Speaking of which. Lu Chuan raised his head. He looked at Li Yanjun, and then continued, go, invite the village chief over. Good. Li Yanjun was so frightened at this moment that he was speechless. He didn't expect that Lu Chuan's woman would be so cruel. She shot arrows as soon as she said she would, without any hesitation. He immediately ran towards the village entrance. You, what do you want to do? Zhao Dabao no longer had the arrogance he had when he came here. He stared at Lu Chuan in front of him and said, no matter what, draw a path. We all make a living in the mountains. Is there no need to kill them all? Zhao Dabao said through gritting his teeth. Kill them all. I don't have any. Lu Chuan curled his lips, and then continued, however, you really need to give an explanation for beating our village chief. Later. Just give the village chief a proper apology. As long as the village chief forgives you, today's incident will be over for now. How? Lu Chuan narrowed his eyes. Sun Ji is a scholar. Although he is a bit pedantic, he is very smart and definitely not the kind of goody-goody who sticks his neck out. Otherwise, he would have quit his job as village chief long ago. I was slapped in the face by Zhao Dabao and others before, there was nothing I could do. The people of Zhaojie village are strong, and the people of Shuangshui village are weak. They have everything. Of course he couldn't fight back. Now, Lu Chuan gave him this opportunity. According to Lu Chuan's understanding of Sun Ji, since Sun Ji has seized this opportunity, he will definitely not give up easily. As expected. Not long after. Li Yanjun walked back to Lu Chuan's yard with a strange look on his face. Where's the village chief? Lu Chuan asked. That, Brother Chuan. I'm so sorry. The village chief said that after being beaten by the people from Zhaojie village, he felt dizzy, his eyes were blurry, his legs hurt, and his body was stiff. He couldn't come over. Hear this. Lu Chuan suddenly laughed. This is the nerdy village chief. Chapter 32. Nonsense. At this moment, a young man from the Zhao family stood there, not daring to move. Said angrily. We just slapped Sun Ji, how could he have a sore leg and a stiff body? Lu Chuan spread out his hands. It may be due to old age and frail body. It is understandable that he has such a symptom. Speaking of this. Lu Chuan suddenly laughed, in that case, then I'll trouble you all to wait here until Uncle Sun recovers. You can leave now after you apologize. The corners of Zhao Dabao's mouth twitched violently. There was a flicker of unwillingness in his eyes. It seemed that he had not expected that Lu Chuan would be so disrespectful. He snorted coldly and said, Lu Chuan, do you really want to do this to the extreme? We are all hunters. We will see each other in the mountains from now on. I don't believe that there is no time when you need help. As he spoke, a sinister look flashed across Zhao Dabao's eyes. But Lu Chuan saw it clearly. Lu Chuan sneered. He really didn't care about Zhao Dabao's threat. If he didn't even have this little bit of ability, how could he dare to provoke these people? He just doesn't want to kill anyone. It's not like I can't kill people. Just as Zhao Dabao said, these days, there are too many hunters dying in the mountains. One more or one less won't make much. As long as you do it a little secretly, there won't be any problem. Really? Lu Chuan smiled and asked, if that time really comes, even if Zhao Liahu wants to help me, I won't dare let you do it. Zhao Dabao's face was gloomy. He naturally knew that Lu Chuan's words were a mockery of him. Ponder for a moment. Lu Chuan, we admit defeat in this matter. You decide how to solve it, and we are willing to compensate you. Zhao Dabao knew that he couldn't stay here forever, but it was not rational to just fight like this. So, I have no choice but to give in temporarily. I'll find a way to get back at you later. The people of Zhaojia village have been hunting in the mountains of our village for such a long time. Shouldn't they take out something to give to the village chief as a token of appreciation? This guy Sun Ji is hiding behind. But he is definitely not someone who will suffer a loss. Although this man looks honest, how could he not have any scheming at all when he has been able to stay in the position of village chief for such a long time? To put it bluntly, the reason why he didn't show up. Because he is not very good at bargaining. Bargaining with the hunters from Zhaojia village would damage the relationship between the two villages. Even if a fight really breaks out at that time. The matter was reported to the county. Maybe the hunters in Zhaojia village can turn the tables. Lu Chuan is very suitable to be the negotiator. It is of course a good thing if he can get some benefits from Zhaojia village. If there is no way to deduct benefits from Zhaojia village, that's no big deal. After all, these things did not originally belong to Shuangshui village. How does that sentence go? The hearts of scholars are all dirty. Lu Chuan didn't hide it either. In theory, you have occupied our back hills for hunting for 3 years. I won't force you to do this. Every month, you should pay 50 kilograms of meat to our Shuangshui village. Count it as your rental fee. 3 years, 600 kilograms of meat a year. Chapter 33. That's 1,800 pounds. Take these things out, and all our past grievances will be wiped out. From now on, the bridge will be the bridge, and the road will be the road. Lu Chuan raised the corner of his mouth and said calmly, what do you think? How is that possible? Zhao Dabao stared at Lu Chuan angrily. Lu Chuan, don't think we are afraid of you. We are willing to show our sincerity, but you should not push your luck. Hear this. Lu Chuan suddenly became interested. Oh, I never thought that Hunter Zhao would go even further. After he finished speaking, he lowered his head and continued, how about this? Since you say I am pushing my limits, then from today on, your Zhaojia village hunting team will be disbanded, and the mountains and forests near your Zhaojia village will all be transferred to our Shuangshui village. You are not allowed to hunt in the mountains without permission. I do it every month. I'll give you 50 kilograms of meat. I won't delay. As long as you nod, you can take away 50 kilograms of meat now. How? There was a hint of sarcasm on Lu Chuan's lips. There was no way that Hunter Zhao would agree to that. Although it is dangerous to go into the mountains, there are many good things in the mountains. In a month, if you don't fight, you can easily get 200 kilograms of meat. It is precisely because of this that the people of the entire Zhaojia village lived very well during this famine year. Almost every household in the village can eat meat. But there is nothing we can do about it. Even if the people of Shuangshui village wanted to follow suit, Shuangshui village was not a village composed of people with a single surname. There is not so much unity among their households. Moreover, in Shuangshui village, there are only a few people who can hunt. After organizing it several times, we still couldn't escape those despicable things. So it was left unresolved later. You're dreaming. Zhao Dabao was speechless for a moment, staring at Lu Chuan fiercely, and then, as if he had thought of something, he continued, even if we are willing to give it to you, do you have so many hunters in Shuangshui village? Can you take over this whole mountain by yourself? Zhao Dabao's eyes were wide open with anger. Lu Chuan curled his lips, don't bother with this. I have drawn 2 paths for you. It's up to you to choose. Lu Chuan said lazily. Zhao Dabao took a deep breath and calmed his disordered breathing. 1,800 kilograms is impossible. First, we can't afford that much. Second, we have never thought of occupying this piece of forest. It's because you don't have hunters, so you can't go into the mountains to hunt. You can't blame us in the end. Zhao Debao clenched his fists tightly. Talk to Lu Chuan honestly and reason with him. It's rare that you can actually reason with me. Lu Chuan was happy, and then pursed his lips, paused for a moment, and then continued, 1,000 kilograms. Just take it out, and we'll call it a day. When we get to the mountain, we'll all rely on our own abilities. Lu Chuan's voice was cold. Zhao Debao took a deep breath. Impossible, we haven't been to the mountain for a long time. So there are not so many prey. It doesn't matter. You can get a discount. Lu Chuan showed his teeth and smiled particularly brightly. Outside now, meat costs about 150 coins. For 1,000 kilograms, you only need to pay 150 taels of silver, and forget about this matter today. How? Lu Chuan looked at Zhao Debao in front of him and smiled what he thought was a warm smile. Chapter 34. Har 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 har. Zhao Debao couldn't help but burst out laughing. There was a hint of ferocity in his eyes. 150 taels of silver. How dare you ask for it? Go ask Sun Ji, he has been the village chief for so many years, if he can come up with 150 taels of silver. There was a hint of sarcasm in Zhao Debao's voice. It doesn't matter. Since Zhaojia village can't pay, it doesn't matter. You can write an IOU stating that you owe Shuangxue village 150 taels of silver today. The monthly interest rate is 3%. Until the money is settled. Lu Chuan spoke with a gentle voice and a kind attitude. However, his voice sounded more arrogant than ever to Zhao Debao. Lu Chuan, your wishful thinking is a little too good. If you have the ability, just kill us all. At this moment, Zhao Debao held his head high and chest out. He looks like a brave man who would rather die than surrender. Snap, snap, snap. Lu Chuan clapped his hands, with a look of appreciation in his eyes, and then said, good, very good. I admire you for being fearless. Lu Chuan looked at Li Yanjun standing aside, paused for a moment and asked, they broke into my house with weapons, intending to rob. According to Daxia law, how should they be convicted? Well, beating to death. After thinking for a moment, Li Yanjun said 2 words. What if, during the process of resistance, I accidentally kill a few people, will I be in trouble? Lu Chuan tilted his head and continued to ask. He was still somewhat unclear about the laws of Daxia. Therefore, before doing anything, you should ask clearly. There are ways to play within the rules, and there are ways to play outside the rules. If he didn't want to become a bandit in the mountains, he could only play within the framework of the law for the time being, and he had to be very careful, otherwise, Jutong would not let him go easily if he got hold of the evidence. This. Li Yanjun scratched his head awkwardly. I don't know either. Why? There was a hint of regret in Lu Chuan's voice. In this case, it would be really difficult for him to do anything. Don't wait until the end, as it would be worth it if you got yourself involved. Anyway, there's no problem with getting injured. At this time, Li Yanjun added. Really? At that moment, Lu Chuan's eyes lit up. Lu Chuan. At this moment, Zhao Debao seemed to be able to sense the murderous aura that was about to burst out of Lu Chuan at any time, and gritted his teeth and said, 150 taels of silver, impossible. I still say the same thing, if you want to go into the mountains to hunt, that is your freedom. We in Zhaojia village have never interfered. Zhao Debao said unwillingly, why should we pay this 150 taels? Oh? There has been no interference and now it is our freedom. Lu Chuan curled his lips. I remember when I came here just now, someone kept saying that it was the hunting ground of their Zhaojia village. If you didn't know, you would think that the whole Bingju was named Zhao. There was mockery in Lu Chuan's eyes. Li Yanjun seemed to want to say something. However, in the end, he did not speak. Before, we were wrong. We were too arrogant. We can compensate Brother Lu for his losses. At this moment, Zhao Debao had no choice but to admit defeat. 150 taels of silver. It's not that Zhaojia village cannot be taken out, but if it is taken out, it will basically be ruined. From then on, he no longer had any prestige in Zhaojia village. I'm willing to pay 10 taels of silver. Chapter 35. At this time, Zhao Debao gritted his teeth and spoke. This is the limit of his ability. Lu Chuan stood there in a daze. Depend on. Zhaojia village is rich. Zhao Debao actually carried 10 taels of silver with him when he went out. Lu Chuan narrowed his eyes and kept calculating in his mind. I guess this should be all the money Zhao Dabao has. And all their weapons on you must be left behind. Lu Chuan's eyes rolled and he said calmly, "This is the evidence that you came to my house and bullied me. I have to take it out from time to time to look at it and remind myself. Don't go too far." There was a hint of anger in Zhao Dabao's eyes. "These are the guys we feed ourselves." Lu Chuan tilted his head and suddenly laughed. He said to Li Yanjun beside him, "These days, there are still people who don't eat with chopsticks and bowls." Li Yanjun looked at Lu Chuan in a daze. A little embarrassing. This joke was a bit dull, so much so that he didn't know whether he should laugh or not. TSK, boring. After he finished speaking, Lu Chuan turned around and looked at Zhao Dabao. "I am the guy who wants you to eat, what can you do? Do you really think I'm some kind of good man or woman?" A hint of murderous intent flashed in Lu Chuan's eyes. "Zhao Dabao, who often travels through the mountains and forests, noticed you at that moment and broke out in a cold sweat. Lu Chuan wanted to kill them. Give." Zhao Dabao gritted his teeth and said, "Everyone, take off your equipment." People in Zhaojie village look at each other. But in the end, he nodded slightly and took off all his equipment, including some bamboo armor, 7 axes, 6 hunting bows, and some long poles. The long pole is also specially made. It has many functions. I have to say that these people in Zhaojie village have a lot of equipment. In addition, there is division of labor and cooperation among each other. Therefore, they can be said to be like fish in water among the mountains and forests. Good. Lu Chuan nodded, looked at the things in front of him, paused for a moment and asked, "You can go now, the feud between us has come to an end." "Thank you." The corner of Zhao Dabao's mouth twitched, and he wanted to say something harsh, but he was a little scared. He knew that the Lu Chuan in front of him definitely wanted to kill him. "If we were just a step slower. I'm afraid I'll really die here." The people of Zhaojie village supported each other and left slowly. Li Yanjun looked at Lu Chuan in surprise. "Brother Chuan, you are so amazing. And sister-in-law, how come you shoot so accurately?" "I can shoot more accurately. No one is as accurate as my husband." At this time, Su Ruan said with a smile. Lu Chuan looked at Su Ruan and immediately laughed. "I have to say, you've hit the nail on the head." Su Ruan was a little confused, but she just stood aside obediently. Lu Chuan took out 3 taels of change from the 10 taels of silver and handed it to Li Yanjun in front of him. "Give this to the village chief. Tell him that this is Zhao Dabao's compensation for his losses." Then, he took out another 2 taels of silver and handed it to Li Yanjun again. "Thank you for your hard work and running so many times. You should keep this money. Your family is not doing well, and you have a wife. Take it to the market and buy some food to get through this year." Chapter 36. You. At this time, Li Yanjun hurriedly shook his head. No, I'm just running errands, anyone else can do this job." "Pity." Lu Chuan laughed and said, "There is no one in the village who is willing to pass on the news to me." Li Yanjun suddenly felt a little embarrassed. "You also know that Zhaojie village is powerful, it is normal for the villagers to be afraid. Being afraid is not just as simple as being afraid of me." Speaking of this, Lu Chuan shook his head helplessly. "Believe it or not, the trouble has just begun." Li Yanjun was stunned. "Are you saying that the people from Zhaojie village will still cause trouble for you?" Lu Chuan looked at Li Yanjun in front of him as if he were a fool, and then patted his shoulder. "Give me another tael of silver." "Good." Li Yanjun handed 1 tael of silver to Lu Chuan. A little confused. A bit naive. A bit cute. Lu Chuan took the silver and said to Chen Miao Miao, "Ji, go cut off the pig's head from their half-pork in the kitchen and have him take it back and cook it. It's just right for replenishing it." Li Yanjun, who had not yet come to his senses, left with 4 taels of silver and half a pig's head. Su Wan covered her mouth and laughed. "Is this person the friend of the head of the family? He looks quite cute." "Good." Lu Chuan smiled and then picked up all the things on the ground. Looking at this low earthen house, I was speechless for a moment. Unfortunately, building a house takes time. Otherwise, I really want to tear down all these annoying mud houses. After Sun Ji got the silver, I was stunned there for a moment, and then I heard what Li Yanjun said. Then he nodded contentedly. "Good boy, he actually beat Zhao to death. It's really rare, I really underestimated him before." Village head. Li Yanjun asked in confusion, "Isn't Brother Chuan a little too easy to talk to?" Zhao Dabao asked for 10 taels of silver, and he agreed. "In my opinion, you can try bargaining." Sun Ji hit Li Yanjun hard on the head. Bullshit, don't talk nonsense if you don't understand. I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong with Lu Chuan. Sun Ji glared at Li Yanjun and said, you can't ask for too much money. 10 taels of silver is enough to make many people jealous. With 150 taels of silver, it will be difficult for Lu Chuan to gain a foothold in the village. Li Yanjun was a little confused. You really should eat more pig brains. Sun Ji sighed, and then continued, besides, it is impossible for Zhao Dabao to come up with so much money. He asked for money at the beginning just to stimulate the man surnamed Zhao. This kid has some tricks. There was some excitement in Sun Ji's eyes. Then, he seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly stood up and paced back and forth in the small room, as if he was thinking about something. There is a lot to be done, a lot to be done. Sun Ji clenched his hands tightly. Sun Ji's appearance made Li Yanjun, who was standing beside him, look confused. There are no secrets in the village. In the blink of an eye, the news had spread to many homes in Shuangshui village. Chen Miao Miao had just finished preparing dinner. Then I heard a series of knocking sounds coming from outside the yard. Dachuanzi, are you at home? A voice that sounded somewhat gentle was heard. When Lu Chuan walked out of the door, he saw a woman standing outside the yard. Chapter 37. Seeing Lu Chuan coming in, he hurriedly said, Dachuanzi, I'm your Aunt Liu San. Lu Chuan suddenly laughed. What did you say? The trouble has just begun. Aunt San. Lu Chuan looked at Aunt Liu, smiled and said, it's so late, what's the matter with you coming to my house? There was some doubt in Lu Chuan's voice. Dachuanzi, it's like this. I heard that you went hunting in the mountains and killed a wild boar. My family hasn't collected enough food for this year's New Year. So I was thinking, could I borrow some pork from you and sell it in the county? Exchange for some food. Aunt Liu said cheerfully, you are really successful. You can actually hunt a wild boar. It has been many years since we have produced a hunter in Shuangshui village. I said back then that Dachuanzi, you will definitely be successful when you grow up. Now look, Aunt San, was I right? Lu Chuan smiled and said, Aunt San, did you remember it wrong? I remember you said at the beginning that I couldn't study or practice martial arts, and it would be difficult for me to achieve anything in the future. I'm afraid I'll just be a farmer for the rest of my life. How is that possible? Third Aunt Liu glared at Lu Chuan and said, Dachuanzi, Third Aunt Liu has always been optimistic about you. You really misunderstood your Third Aunt Liu this time. Lu Chuan suddenly laughed. Aunt San, I'm afraid it won't work. As you know, there are 3 people in my family now, and 3 people need 3 stones of grain. The grain on the market this year is really too expensive. After skinning and deboning a wild boar, there really isn't much meat left. I still don't have enough here. I really don't have any spare meat to support your family. Would you like to think of another way? Lu Chuan said happily. Dachuanzi. Aunt San showed a hint of displeasure on her face, and then continued, the 2 women in your family don't know how to work. I heard that they do nothing at home all day long. What are you going to do with her? In my opinion, it's better to just get divorced. Do you still remember your sister Xiuxiang? It's my daughter. He's definitely one of our farmers. I'll marry you then, and you 2 can live happily together, how about that? Aunt Liu said excitedly, as for the betrothal gift, I don't ask for much. Just half a pig will do. Whoosh! Just at this moment, the arrow in Su Ruan's hand flew out in an instant. Shot directly on Aunt Liu's doorstep. Standing at the doorframe with a smile on her face. Oh, sorry, Auntie. It's not like I don't know anything. I can even shoot arrows. Su Ruan looked at Aunt Liu in front of her with amusement, however, you are not very skilled. If you continue to talk nonsense here, I can't guarantee that my next arrow will miss the target. While talking, he also blinked at Aunt Liu. Lu Chuan turned around, glanced at Su Ruan, and immediately smiled. Unexpectedly, this little girl was jealous. Shrew! Shrew! At this time, Aunt Liu was so angry that she jumped up. Dachuanzi, can you please take care of it? We are relatives, and your wife actually treats the elders in the family like this. It's really outrageous. This has already violated the 7 rules for divorce. You can just divorce her. Aunt Liu said angrily. Swoosh! Another sound of breaking through the air was heard. Aunt Liu's hairbun fell off. Chapter 38. R. Aunt Liu's shrill screams were heard. No injuries though. But it really scared her. There was anger in her eyes as she glared at Lu Chuan and Su Ruan. You, how dare you do this to me? Aunt Liu felt a little guilty. Lu Chuan doesn't care about that. Aunt, I'm so sorry. My family doesn't have enough food. I'm still worried about what to do when the officials come to collect the annual food in a few days. As for my wife, I won't bother you with any worries. I just happen to like this, Aunt Liu, goodbye. After saying that, Lu Chuan turned around and ignored Aunt Liu, who was jumping up and down there. See, I told you, the trouble has just begun. Lu Chuan spread out his hands helplessly. Besides, this is considered easy to talk about. Lu Chuan added. Hate people who have, laugh at people who have nothing, despise people who are poor, and be afraid of people who are rich. This is human nature. Originally, the people in the village basically mocked Lu Chuan because his family was indeed poor, and when the land was distributed, they were given the poorer plots in the village, so the yield of the crops grown was very low. So, every year is very difficult. And this year, he froze to death in the snow and wind. Nowadays, the poor are suddenly rich. The first people to be irritated would definitely be those who originally looked down on him. The head of the family. At this time, Bai Siu had a worried look on his face. He paused for a moment before saying, should we not go into the mountains these days? Are you scared? Lu Chuan smiled. He could see that Bai Siu was not very good at dealing with such trivial matters. Bai Siu was a little embarrassed. It's not that I'm afraid, I just think it's quite cumbersome. It's okay. I'll try to make some bricks in the next few days to renovate our house. No need to go up the mountain. After these things are dealt with, I will go to the county town again. Lu Chuan still needs to buy some more food. There is also the loom that Bai Siu has been thinking about. Actually. At this time, Su Ruan sighed, actually, sometimes I understand them. Although I am not a soldier, I have been to many places and have seen the sufferings of the people. Nowadays, although there are fewer wars in Bingju, the lives of the people are still not easy. Most of them can barely make ends meet. That's why I can't help but feel a little more calculating. Speaking of this, Su Ruan sighed, however, understanding does not mean acceptance. When it really happened to me, I still felt it was excessive and I was very angry. Lu Chuan patted Su Ruan on the head, okay, don't think too much, just leave these things to me. Chen Miao Miao stood quietly aside. If you don't speak, you'll be like a wooden man. However, there were some strange thoughts in my mind. This Lu Chuan doesn't seem that hateful. But what should we do in the future? Is it really necessary to live like this in this place? Thinking of this, Chen Miao Miao couldn't help feeling a little sad. At night, Chen Miao Miao lay in the bed feeling a little uneasy. Next to him is Su Ruan. You? Chapter 39. Chen Miao Miao opened her mouth, as if she wanted to ask something. However, in the end, there was silence. Miss Ji. At this time, Su Ruan spoke lightly, her voice neither sad nor happy, as if she was explaining an insignificant matter, but the tone made people feel alienated. I can sense that you have an unusual temperament. I took a closer look at you. You are not Han Chinese, right? Chen Miao Miao was stunned for a moment, but didn't say anything. I don't care who you are or what mission you have. Or where you'll go in the future. Since you are in this house, just be honest and stay here simply. I, the head of the family, say you will treat you well. Whether it's food or daily necessities, as long as we have them, we won't blame you. But you must never bring back any trouble from outside. Although the head of the family has some abilities, this family really can't withstand any wind and rain. Su Ruan said calmly, you can take my words as a heart-to-heart talk, or as a threat. If one day, I find out that our peaceful life has encountered an accident because of you, I will never let you go. Su Ruan's voice was cold. Chen Miao Miao paused. I know a little about your affairs. Don't you want revenge? Chen Miao Miao spoke up. Su Ruan didn't know how to answer for a moment. I don't know. If I say I have no intention of revenge, that would be a lie. However, even if I want revenge, I will never involve the boss. Chen Miao Miao turned her head. Looked at Su Ruan. There seemed to be some doubt in his eyes. Since you followed him, it's impossible to sever your relationship with him. Your identity, Bai Siu's identity, or my identity. Although it may not seem like a big deal now, for him, it could completely destroy him at any time. Chen Miao said lightly. I won't allow this to happen. Su Ruan said calmly. You don't know him, and you've only been in this family for a few days. Why do you support him so much? Chen Miao was a little puzzled, with a hint of doubt in her eyes. You don't understand. But you will understand. Su Ruan said something confusing. Chen Miao didn't ask any more questions and slowly closed her eyes. The next day, after Lu Chuan woke up, he first performed a set of boxing exercises in the yard. A few days. Lu Chuan felt that his body had become much stronger. When he swung his fists, he could hear gusts of wind whistling. Su Ruan looked at Lu Chuan practicing boxing with a hint of surprise in her eyes. Lu Chuan's progress is a bit too great. Lu Chuan also felt a little strange. He discovered that when he practiced Xingyiquan this time, it became different from his previous life. Smoother. I didn't encounter any of the troubles and difficulties I had encountered before. This made Lu Chuan feel more confused. But this is a good thing after all. After practicing boxing, Lu Chuan started building a brick kiln. In fact, building a brick kiln is not a particularly troublesome job. It is difficult for those who don't know how to do it, but it is not difficult for those who know how to do it. What really troubled Lu Chuan was the firing process. When firing bricks, the temperature must reach between 1000 and 1200 degrees. It is most suitable to be able to maintain 1100 degrees. It's not good if it's too low, and it's not good if it's too high. However, there is no way to test the temperature now, so we need to keep trying to burn bricks. Adjust the size and position of the vents. Also, as for the fuel for burning, it is actually not easy to find coal nowadays. Chapter 40. While Lu Chuan was busy, there was the sound of footsteps not far away, but the sound of the footsteps sounded a little hollow. Lu Chuan raised his head and looked. I found that Sun Lazy came over at some point. One hand was wrapped tightly, looking a little funny. The moment he saw Sun Lazy, Lu Chuan's brows furrowed deeply. He didn't expect that this Sun Lazy would dare to come in front of him. Brother Chuan. The moment I saw Lu Chuan, Sun Lazy cried out somewhat embarrassedly. Then, he knelt down on the ground very solemnly, with a serious look in his eyes. Brother Chuan, let me follow you from now on. From today on, I will do whatever you ask me to do. I'll hit whoever you tell me to hit. Sun Mian originally hated Lu Chuan yesterday, and since he was injured, he even planned to settle accounts with Lu Chuan. But the people from Zhaojie village arrived before him. After hearing about what happened between Lu Chuan and Zhaojie village. But Sun Mian was really scared. After all, he was just an ordinary person and was no match for Zhao Dabao and the others. He's just a reckless person, even if he has a little bit of ability. But in the eyes of these hunters, he is nothing. And Lu Chuan even shocked Zhao Dabao and the others. Does that mean that Lu Chuan's ability is actually greater than Zhao Dabao and the others? After figuring all this out, Sun Mian no longer had any resentment towards Lu Chuan. At the same time, he was constantly thinking about how to get some benefits from Lu Chuan. Then he figured it out. Since I am a lazy person who just idles away my time all day long, it would be better to just follow Lu Chuan and become an errand boy. Lu Chuan is a hunter, and it seems that he is quite capable. By then, just a little bit of broth flowing out of his mouth would be enough for Sun Lazy to eat and drink his fill. It was because he had figured this out that he came here today. Lu Chuan looked at Sun Lazy strangely, then laughed speechlessly. You want to follow me? Sun Lazy nodded very seriously. Before, I was blind and dared to provoke you. Now, I realize my mistake and want to correct it. As long as you give me a chance. I promise that I will definitely be your most loyal follower in the future. Lu Chuan patted the ground and said, Come and sit down. I have something to ask you. Okay. Sun Lazy nodded hurriedly, and then sat down carefully next to Lu Chuan. I need some coal, can I get some? Lu Chuan's voice was very soft. How many? Sun Lazy's eyes lit up and he asked subconsciously. The more the better. Lu Chuan nodded and said. In fact, there is coal for sale nowadays. It is also called coal. However, even if this thing exists, it is not easy to buy. Of all the coal mined in a coal mine, 20% must be handed over to the government, and the remaining 40% is directly purchased by the government at a low price. There are still 40% left. these 40% can nominally be sold freely on the market.